Hello, puppies and kittens in the dystopian hellscape. Welcome to another episode of Blasphemers Bible. We're joined again by Kip Davis, who's showing off that he has better hair than me, you betch.
I'm
Now,
not as old
boys,
as you.
you're both
To
pretty.
be fair,
You're both pretty.
You know, I
All
beg
right.
to differ.
You know, I just like to say that since so many of us on TikTok are now Chinese, if you're chronically online, you'll know what I'm talking about. They've been sharing wonderful hair care tips, and I've made some fermented rice water with rosemary and orange oil for my hair. So it does help with the growth and maintenance of the roots. I'll give you that recipe off camera. It's really easy.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd be
I'll give you
interested
that
in
recipe off camera. Yeah. I never liked your spinach puffs. Okay. And we're moving into Job 31. Do we
Yes.
have any opening commentary on this?
This is
I
basically
do.
this is basically Job's final speech, kind of.
Right. I like to.
I mean, there is a response to Elihu, but this is basically like he shuts
It's
he
his
shuts
last
the fuck up
pulpit
afterwards.
moment.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like to call this one. Is Job still talking?
yeah.
Valid.
And of course,
Okay.
it has to be 40 verses long.
Okay.
Of course.
And
Of
we
course.
will jump in. I have made a covenant with my eyes. How then could I look upon a virgin? What would be my portion from God above and my heritage from the Almighty on high? Does not calamity befall the unrighteous and disaster the workers of iniquity? Does he not see my ways and number all my steps? If I have walked with falsehood and my foot has hurried to deceit, let me be weighed in just balance and let God know my integrity. If my step has turned aside from the way and my heart followed my eyes, and if any spot has clung to my hands, then let me sow and another eat, and let what grows for me be rooted out. If my heart has been enticed by a woman, and I have lain in wait at my neighbor's door, then let my wife grind for another, and let other men kneel over her. For what would be a heinous crime? For that would be a heinous crime. That would be a criminal offense. For that would be a fire consuming down to Abaddon, and it would burn to the root of all my harvest. If I have rejected the cause of my male or female slaves when they brought a complaint against me, what then shall I do when God rises up? When he makes inquiry, what shall I answer him? Did not he who made me in the womb make them? God made him in the womb. Okay. And did not one fashion us in the womb? If I have withheld anything that the poor desired, or have caused the eyes of the widow to fail, or to have eaten have eaten my morsel alone, and the orphan has not eaten from it. For from my youth I reared the orphan like a father, and from my mother's womb I guided the widow. If I have seen anyone perish for lack of clothing, or a poor person without covering, whose loins have not blessed me, and who was not warmed by the fleece of my sheep, if I have raised my hand against an orphan, because I saw that I had supporters at the gate, then let my shoulder blade fall from my shoulder, and let my arm be broken from its socket. For I was in terror of calamity from God, and I would not have faced his majesty. I could not have faced his majesty. If I've made gold my trust, or called fine gold my confidence, if I've rejoiced because my wealth was great, or because my hand had gotten much, if I had looked upon the sun when it shone or the moon moving in splendor, and my heart has been secretly enticed, and my mouth has kissed my hand, This also would be iniquity to be punished by the judges, for I would have been false to God above. If I have rejoiced at the ruin of those who hated me, or exulted when evil overtook them, I have not let my mouth sin by asking their lives with a curse. Oh, that we might be sated with his flesh. The stranger has not lodged in the street. I have opened my doors to the traveler. If I have concealed my transgression, as others do, by hiding my iniquity in my bosom, because I stood in great fear of the multitude, and the contempt of families terrified me, so that I kept silence and did not go out of doors, oh, that I had one to hear me. Here is my signature. Let the Almighty answer me. Oh, that I had the indictment written by my adversary. Surely I would carry it on my shoulder. I would bind it on me like a crown. I would give him an account of all my steps. Like a prince, I would approach him. If my hand had cried out against me, and its furrow have wept together, if I have eaten its yield without payment, and caused the death of its owners, let thorns grow instead of wheat, and foul weeds instead of barley. The words of Job are ended.
Yeah,
Oh,
see,
fucking
even
finally.
the author was
Jesus
fed up with it.
fuck.
You know,
It just goes on and on and on and whines about how awful he is. Do you know that there are
I know.
starving children in Africa, Job? Grow up. My God, what did you lose exactly, huh? What
I'm
did
just
you lose?
comfortable. I'm just
ungrateful
very
bastard.
comforted. I'm comforted that we all know that he was an ethical slaveholder who was kind and just to his slaves.
Oh,
And yeah,
this
I
is-
know in
whatever
those
that means.
days it wasn't, triangular slave trade, but Jesus Christ. Like, oh my God.
This is for real though.
I know.
I published a video of this last week about slavery in the Bible, and because it's just a talking point that just never seems to go away. That's fun. But in the comments section, this was this is something that came up. I mean, slavery's fine. You just have to do it right. Look at Job. Look at how Job did it. What
No.
what's
He
there?
was
Honestly,
nice
what
to
does he
them,
say?
like-
It's all of like a single verse, 2 verses where he basically says, "When my slaves complain to me, I listen to them." Okay. Great. That's wow. Yeah, that fixes everything. That makes it all okay.
I forgot it was
And
that
I
easy to justify
understand.
owning people.
I understand that people say, oh, well, it was an economic reality. It wasn't like, American slavery was uniquely dehumanizing in history. For the majority of history, slavery was just a case of woe to the vanquished. Whoever wins, we won, you do our shit that we don't want to do. I get that, but that doesn't make it good. That doesn't make it the pinnacle of righteousness. That makes it less abhorrent than one of the most abhorrent things in humanity. Yay, you. And
I
one of
should
the more
also note-
interesting, actually, I just want to finish this one point. One of the more interesting arguments against slavery that was part of the early abolitionist movement, someone pointed out that it's horrible what slavery does to the slaves. It's horrible, it's degrading, but we forget that it also degrades the slave owners. That the slave has the capacity to be in possession of every virtue. They may not be, but they have that possibility. The slave owner can't, because he will always be the person who owned another human being, and that stain will never be removed from his soul. And
Can you imagine if the Bible included that passage?
Then it might actually have morals.
So here's the thing, and Josh helpfully points this out in the video. Within the Bible, slavery is bad. Like it's as an institution, it's a reality. It's one that the Bible certainly accommodates. But if you're in a position to be a slave, that's bad. You should not want this to happen to you. It is something for you to avoid at all costs, because it's a terrible situation. And I think people often forget that on the one hand, while the Bible is fine in condoning this reality, it also recognizes that this is shit for people, that this is not a great situation to find yourself in. And I you know why our world is pretty fucked up. Why on earth would people pine, would people think that this is something we want to get back to? There's just no rationale for it. It's good for no one. Lilith is right. It dehumanizes everyone involved. It's just like, fuck off with that shit.
I should note that in Clines' commentary, he writes that Job's attitude certainly outstrips the norms of his day, and he quotes from PK, quote, "a most remarkable advance on the ethics of antiquity," end quote, and contains at least the seed of a very revolutionary social order.
Really?
Oh my God.
No.
You know, I
That's-
don't beat
God,
my
that's such
slaves as much
bullshit.
as the neighbor.
It-
Oh, Jesus Christ. I understand there are bad systems in the world. And as individuals, we do not necessarily have the power to overthrow them. And we may choose, depending on our circumstances, to try and make them more bearable where we can, if we can't directly oppose them or judge that we can't. But oh my God.
Mm.
Okay, I got a
That is
question.
not the pinnacle of morality.
I got a question on the very first line. I don't understand what he's trying to say here. I have made a covenant with my eyes. How then could I look upon a virgin?
Well,
Yeah.
it's that he doesn't check out young women because that would be thought crime. Remember how looking
Okay,
at
I
women,
just want to make sure that just looking at somebody
yeah,
is
lustfully.
yes. Well,
Oh,
he didn't
yeah.
say lustfully. Just there is no option, right? If
Oh,
you
yeah,
look
no,
at a
women
virgin-
just fleshlights with bodacious asses. That's the only thing we exist to do. Well, and I mean, we do also cook kids.
you said it, not me.
No, but this is, I mean, if you read, and this is absolutely a view that has been part of the Middle Eastern thought process. If you read like the Tales of Scheherazade, the original ones, 1001 Nights, there's a riddle in one of the tales that goes something like, I looked at a girl in the morning and it was unlawful. I looked at her again, it was lawful. I looked at her again, it was unlawful. It was lawful, it was unlawful. And the idea was she was someone else's slave, it was unlawful to look at her. You bought her, it was lawful to look at her. You freed her,
Oh.
it was unlawful to look at her. You married her, it was lawful to look at her. You divorced her, it was unlawful to look at her. And then you married her again, which made it lawful to look at her. Basically, you can look at her if she belongs to you.
I should note that. Oh, sorry, Lawrence.
Sorry, yeah, I did have one note here. This makes a lot more sense in context. So the virgin there is probably an allusion to the virgin goddess Anat of Canaanite mythology. Idolatry, not lust, is the offense. And no, that makes sense with the rest of the section, though.
I know that. I know that Clines doesn't agree with this. I mean, I know that Habel does. No, actually, Habel doesn't. But Clines as well writes that there's no likelihood that the virgin is a term for the goddess Ishtar or for Anat, who is commonly referred to as such in the Ugaritic texts, etc., etc. Such an illusion is unlikely to form the headline of this chapter, which by no means centers on legitimate and illegitimate worship.
It does involve like idolatry, but it also involves lust. You know, if I wait at my neighbor's house, may another grind on my wife, which thanks, dude. Glad to know she had agency.
I mean, we've already seen this term grind on one's wife. I think we saw that on Genesis. Wait, where's the verse again? Verse 10. We saw that already in previous chapter. in one of the verses. I can't remember exactly where.
Yeah.
I need to
I
check.
mean, in a way, it's better to like, to make yourself not look at something rather than forcing them to cover up. But
Yes, if you have no self-control and no emotional regulation and are still a toddler who thinks everything you look at is mine,
Oh,
but have sexuality, then yes, please close your eyes.
It's an
okay. So there is.
interesting-
So wait. So it might not be sexual at all. Wait a minute.
That's
Yeah,
what Lawrence
ju-
was suggesting.
yeah,
that,
also
that was from the NRSVUE.
Also,
Yeah.
I think this
Out
chapter
there, yeah.
kind of reads like you have like, if I don't do this, of course I won't do that. It's kind of like 2 degrees of the same thing.
Oh, come on.
And like I
can
think
see that.
I think it's Rashi explains this verse as being like the first part of the verse is saying I made a covenant with my eyes not to look at married women because a married woman is forbidden. So even more so, I don't even look at virgins or unmarried women, which are technically
What
allowed,
is
but
it?
I put an extra stringency on myself.
Okay. I got some comments here. Shut up, Matt says, Aaron, in the words of James Burke, there are starving children in Africa. Name one. Okay. And then Satan 616 says, simply ask slave begging racists this. Are you willing to be my slave? No? Then why do you want slaves? Now shut the fuck up. Yeah. I've noticed that the people who own slaves, the people of that mentality, are completely unable to put themselves in someone else's shoes. They put their shoes on someone else. And then Jojo Freelancer says, was Job a Noahide according to the biblical interpretations?
It's not a biblical interpretation,
We
but
don't know.
but according to the Noahide like idea, which comes from the Talmud, by definition, he would have been a Noahide if he wasn't an Israelite because he was righteous. So
If there is a note here from Clines, the difficulty is that grind is not an entirely appropriate term for the woman. Midrash Rabbah Genesis 48 is used of the man's sexual activity, unless perhaps it signifies, quote, serve him as it were as a nether millstone, and quote, as delich. The parallelism in the second colon, where sexual activity is clearly spoken of, would incline one to this option, nonetheless. Hoffman, Beer, Hirscher, Forer proposed to mend matters by reading Titachen may she be ground, the following lamed being the lamed of agent, so too in EB. But it merely translates, may my wife be another man's slave, as if there were no sexual reference at all.
Sure, Jan.
Sure. There is also one thing that I wanted to note in when it comes to verse 1. Where is it? Yeah, so he notes that the idea is common in the Hebrew Bible that sin proceeds from the eyes. Compare Genesis 3:6, 2 Samuel 11:2, Psalms 109:37. Ben Sira advises his reader to entertain no thought about a virgin, but his reason is wholly prudential. It is, quote, lest you be enmeshed in damages for her, end quote, in Ben Sira 14:10, I believe.
Oh yeah, this is very interesting. Yeah, so there is the reference to Ben Sira, and it looks like it's from 9:5. At a virgin, do not look, lest you be trapped into sin with her. But there is also, so Pope goes with the translation, I put a ban on my eyes that I would not look upon folly. So he's going with the reading Nebala, with when the Masoretic text has and I'm going to pronounce this wrong because it's transliterated, Betula, the virgin, right? So there he's going with a different reading there. He's going with folly instead of virgin, which I suppose would also make this section make a lot of sense.
I love how there are so many divergent interpretations, and all of them are bad and dehumanizing to women.
To be fair, like the amount of commentaries on Job, which are good, are not many, and it kind of sucks that like
Good
this
in
is what
what
we do.
way, though? Like, well researched, or just
Like actually
involved-
critical, I think he means, because
Yeah,
like
I mean, I would categorize Habel and Clines' commentaries as critical, but
yes.
the problem is that there are not many of them. The recent
enough.
technical commentary is by Dwayne Garrett, and it's from the Evangelical Exegetical Commentary.
That's actually not that bad of a series. Surprisingly.
Well, I know
Like, shockingly.
I know from Tomasino's commentary
Right.
on Esther, but the thing is, I've at least Chrissy advised me not to use
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah, that's fair. But they're not as bad as they sound. Let me put it that
yeah,
way.
I know, but like the fact that it is most of the commentaries are either evangelical or just not the best. Like
Yeah, they're certainly most if we're talking sheer volume here, most of the commentaries on Job are just like like, oh, what Job can mean for you in your life or something like that. Some bullshit that no one fucking gives a shit about.
Yeah.
So like and those I don't call those commentaries. They're just not.
yeah. 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 So okay, I'll start the commentary. I'll start with verse 1. Some commentators, like Keresko and Good, have suggested that the reference to a virgin in association with a covenant may refer to Ishtar or Anat, who is commonly referred to as a virgin in Ugaritic texts. Habel, however, writes that in the pre-Israelite world of the patriarchal heroes, where the poet has located Job, a direct allusion to Anat as the rival of Yahweh would be anachronistic. Hartley writes that in the Old Testament, the eyes were considered the gateway to the heart, for their gaze may arouse the deepest desires, and so spur their owner to transgress God's laws, as we see in Genesis 3:6 and 2 Samuel 11:2. The people were, therefore, enjoined to remember God's commandments, and not prostitute themselves by following the lusts of their hearts and eyes. Numbers 15:39. On verse 2, Hartley comments, quote, in a series of 3 questions, one each in the next 3 verses, Job considers how God would treat him if he had looked longingly at a maiden. He believes that God, who is exalted, living on high, fixes a lot, chelek, or plans a heritage, nachala, for every person on earth in just measure to his deeds. Parenthetically, this question counters Eliphaz's accusation that Job has acted wickedly because he believes that God, dwelling on high, is concealed by dense clouds that prevent him from taking notice of events on earth. 22:12-18. Here it is clear that although Job believes that God is transcendent, he is also convinced that God knows and judges every human deed. This question indicates that prior to his trial, Job held a view of retribution similar to his friend's view. There should be no surprise at Job's uttering this line, even in the light of his complaint against God, for he still believes that if he had violated the covenant, he would have been judged by God. But the issue for him now is whether his suffering can be taken as proof that he has violated the standard of his day. On verse 6, Clines notes that the idea of God weighing the human being in the scales is reminiscent of the Egyptian picture of the underworld judgment of the dead. There, the heart of the recently deceased is weighed against a feather, symbol of Ma'at as truth, in the presence of Osiris in the Hall of Truth, according to the Book of the Dead, chapter 125. In the Hebrew Bible, the testing is a this worldly one, as shown in Proverbs 21:2, 24:14, which Job also invokes, since God doesn't seem to know or recognize that he is dealing with an innocent man. Although Terian suggested that the just balances, in Hebrew Mosnei Tzedek, are a cynical reference to divine dishonesty, Clines writes that Job is confident that God would consider his case, instead of throwing his weight about, and would find that Job is the innocent man he claims to be. He further writes, quote, The post-mortem examination of the heart was surely dreaded by most of those who believed in its reality, but it is hard to see how Job could do anything other than welcome an investigation of his heart, since it would vindicate his reputation. So to him, being weighed in the balances could hardly be a punishment or a self-curse. It is very unlikely the curse of verse 8 that others should eat what he has sown. So we should, with several versions like RV, RSV, NIV, regard this verse not as a self-imprecation, but as merely a parenthesis as the sentence moved towards in its climax in verse 8. Pope rightly observes that the sentence is not a self-imprecation, but a challenge to God to judge him justly and thus exonerate him.
Okay, I've got some comments on these first few. I mean, Job says, "Does not calamity befall the unrighteous?" No, they end up owning and controlling everything. And disaster, the workers of iniquity? No, same thing. They get off scot-free.
He means
worst,
eventually.
at worst, you might have to resign, but you'll never see prison time. And does he not see my ways and number all my steps? No, he doesn't. Either of those things. If I have walked with falsehood and my foot has hurried to deceit, let me be weighed in a just balance and let God know my integrity. Well, I got one problem with that. I can't let God know anything because God doesn't exist. Yes, you've walked your entire life in falsehood and your feet have always hurried to deceit.
This
There
is
is no
the
God. Quit lying to yourself.
conventional. This is the conventional wisdom of the day. That and that's I think that's part of, like, when you read this. Of course, it's you're right about all this, Aaron. I think when you read this though, the reader, the first readers of this kind of stuff are probably nodding along with Job, going, "Well, you're right. Like, this is the way it's supposed to work, but
Yeah.
it's not working out. How do
Yeah.
what do we do about that? Because it doesn't seem to be working out that way. Look at this poor guy, poor Job, who looks like he has all the trappings of a righteous man, and look what he's enduring. So yeah, there's a problem here.
I've
Yeah.
noticed that. I've noticed that it's a very important difference, and you should take note of it in all people you interact with. Uh, Everybody has the way they expect the world to be, the way they think the world should be. We have these ideas, especially when we're young. We're trying to
Mhm.
lay out a schematic. The world, we may be right in some things, but the world is not going to do what you want it to do. When you come against that, you either adjust your expectations or remain stubborn and insist the world has an obligation to adjust itself to you. Children do the latter. So do narcissists. If an adult is not willing to recognize when reality is not meeting their expectations and insists that reality is wrong, have nothing to do with them and make sure none of your time, money, or effort is invested in anything they do. Just no touch, run away.
Mm. I don't know, maybe this is maybe I'll just mention this now. This is a text from Job that is actually partially preserved in a copy from the Dead Sea Scrolls, 4Q99, which looks like it's pretty old. It looks like it's like early to mid Hasmonean, so before or around 100 BCE. It's kind of cool because it preserves text from Job 31, 14 to 19, 32, 3 to 4, 33, a bunch of verses, 35, 36. The reconstruction though is only up to 16 lines for a column, which is like this big. It's tiny. The margins are really small. They're less than a centimeter, which means that this is like just I mean, it's certainly not the Book of Job. What we have here, it looks like it's maybe a selection of the speeches from the Book of Job, just in an individual scroll or manuscript on its own. These are the sorts of things that always fascinate me.
I can definitely see that. It's interesting trying to piece the puzzle together with so few of the pieces. How much could this possibly be a part of? Is it even conceivable that this could be part of a greater scroll of Job, or is that just physically impossible? And how do you?
Physically
Yeah,
impossible.
and oh, I
So,
I believe you. I believe
yeah.
you're the expert. I'm not arguing with that. It's but the mental puzzle of figuring out how do you verify that and where do you put your probabilities and all that. Like this is really intriguing.
Yeah.
This is fucking fun. But then I like puzzles,
So
so
yeah, and then at that point, my next question is, well, what is this, and what do you do with it? Like, why this manuscript? Who was using this to what end? Why did they have this? So those are fun questions.
I
Oh,
think.
also, it's written stichometrically, which
Oh,
means that it's like a poetical format where individual lines of the individual parallels are they get their own dedicated line.
nice. Sort of that rhyming. It's sort of a
Hmm.
poetic vibe. Kind of a yeah.
Yeah, very much so.
I'm not doing any better at describing this than you.
I have
But
my own thoughts too about how that factors into the development of
as
scribal
I
practices. It seems like
yeah.
stichometric arrangements for these sorts of texts were a bit of a novel feature as
Mm.
early as the second century
Oh, that could be
BCE.
interesting for dating purposes. Um,
Yeah, potentially.
yeah, potentially. Now, you're obviously the expert on this. Is it true? Because I got the impression from what I heard that there was a lot of scraps from wisdom literature and like the
Oh,
wisdom
yeah.
bits that were maybe later fed into other things in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
I'm not sure. So, I mean, all I'll say is there's a ton of material that we would classify as wisdom literature in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and more than half of it is not like Bible. Like it's
Yeah,
additional it's additional material. So this is yeah, they love this shit. So,
it
and that's
sounds
probably
fun.
why it's probably why, and this is sort of I think this is intriguing as well. It's probably why they had so many copies of the Book of Job. They had quite a few copies of the Book of Job. It's also a little strange though too that maybe strange that they didn't have a ton of copies of the Book of Proverbs. They actually much preferred seem to have preferred this other composition that we didn't know before the discoveries at Qumran. Scholars have called it
Ooh,
instruction. They had several very large, well-preserved copies of that. Um, and it reads a little bit like the Book of Proverbs. It's a collection of instruction for good living, good living, best way to do things in the day.
hmm,
But
interesting.
yeah,
Does it have any Ecclesiastes?
yeah. There's how many? There's at least one manuscript of
Okay. All right,
Ecclesiastes.
that's
Yeah.
awesome.
So sorry, I didn't mean to take us
No, Dead
off,
Sea sounds really
but
fun. If I ever get my life in order, I'll come study it under you. It'd
brilliant.
be fun.
Okay, on verses 9 and 10, several commentators note that Job's oath is full of innuendos and euphemisms. Habel notes that dor, petach, is apparently a reference to the virginity or pudenda of the neighbor's daughter or wife, as compare Song of Songs 4:12, in contrast to the more common word for door, delet, which is found in the expression doors of the womb in 3:10. Habel notes that in wisdom literature, the loose woman is a major symbol of temptation for wise men, quote unquote, to live the way of wisdom, as we see in Proverbs 2:16 through 19, 6:23 through 32, and 7:4 through 27. Job, however, has never been tempted to leave the path of purity, and the sanction he proposes is directed against his wife. Hartley writes that the violation of another's wife was a treacherous act, breaking the bond of trust among neighbors. At the same time, it was a sin against one's own wife, a violation of the covenant of marriage. Moreover, whenever a person sins against another, God's name is profaned, Amos 2:7. Clines comments, quote, "Since in Job's world a man's adultery with a married woman is not an offense against his own marriage, but an offense against the woman's husband, the punishment Job would have envisaged for himself is the adultery of other men against himself." Or we could say, since adultery is regarded as primarily an infringement of property law, according to Terrien, Job's self-curse for robbing another man of his property is to hand over his own property to other men. Grinding grain is the occupation of the most lowly household servant. There is a class aspect here, for Job's wife is not likely to have been a domestic drudge. He wishes for her a degradation in status. Some have seen in the term grind a sexual connotation, but this is unlikely without an emendation of the text. The fact that a woman slave would very likely also be used as a concubine of her master, for example, according to Davidson, does not mean that such is the connotation of the term. On verses 13 through 15, Habel notes that Job reaffirms his earlier boast that his administration of justice was perfect, as we see in 29:7 through 17. His slaves could present a legal complaint to him, and he would process their case even if it were directed against him personally. Rather than treating his slaves as chattels, he regards them as individuals with legal rights as human beings. Habel notes that the ironic side of Job's claim to have treated his slaves, quote-unquote, with iniquity and justice is its bitter reminder to God that Job had earlier accused him of treating human beings as slaves forced to labor on earth, where they longed for death, in 7:1 and 2. Job implies that he, not God, has demonstrated how a slave should be treated in judicial matters. He further writes, quote, "Job's lawsuit with El is still pending. If Job's record as an administrator of justice were blemished, he could not expect to stand before El when El finally rises in court, compared 1925, in response to Job's summons, in verse 14. Job had already risen in court to present his legal challenge in 3028. Job now maintains that if he were given the same opportunity as his own slaves, he would win his suit with El in 1318. Job's rationale for regarding his slaves as equals with other citizens is his common humanity with them, in verse 15. The belief that a common creator and a common human origin justifies regarding all mortals as equals with common rights before God and the court is consistent with the creation theology elsewhere in wisdom literature, in Proverbs 17:5a and 22:2.
I got a comment from Dara O'Kane, 4236. Says, Job just saying this isn't fair. This isn't how things are meant to be. The book is asking, why do bad things happen to good people?
Right, and once we get to the end of it, basically, after all this arguing back and forth, we realize we don't know why. They just got to do.
Yeah.
They just put you.
There's no answer.
Gotta
It's
stay
just,
faithful.
I'm Brittany, bitch.
Yeah.
That's the answer.
Yeah, there's no solution to the problem of evil given here.
Well, God just comes down and his riz is just so epic that everybody is overwhelmed and then they shut up and that solves the problem, right?
Well, it is funny that this is the complaint, not just in Job, but I mean all throughout Job, right? And you would think that there would be an epiphany in there somewhere, but it seems like that the story was written to make sure that epiphany doesn't occur.
Well, it's not that. It's that, like, because this is since it's wisdom literature, like we can compare it to genres, like similar genres in other cultures, and they've all thought about this kind of stuff, about why there is evil, why bad things happen to good people, and a lot of the time it's very much like we don't really know, but I guess we got to keep our head up. Like it's them pontificating on the God, what's the right way to put this? On like on honestly some of life's biggest questions, especially at the time. Yeah, they're just trying to figure out the world in their own way, and Job was a character by which they were trying to do that.
But I mean, they do make Job out to where he has to do all of this suffering and everything, and this is God's will that he's suffering. But
Right.
at no point can you question the assumption of God. That's never I don't think the Bible ever entertains the question of, is there a God? Right? They always say that wisdom is making this on this baseless assumption
and building your life on it. Yeah.
I mean, hey, basically everyone in the ancient world had that starting point.
And they did. And like I said last time, that it's not a logical catharsis they come to, it's an emotional one. This is what the believers, you sort of reach this emotional point of, and we do as humans, when you first come to terms with death and the injustice of the world, it's a huge moment in your development as a human being, and it is very impactful. And that is something we all have to struggle with in our own way, and that is part of being human and part of our journey as human beings. And I think a really key and important part, and it's one of the things I object to in religion, is that it prevents people from genuinely taking that journey and facing hard truths without a deceptive fallback. And yeah, but the question is not wrong. The problem is that they expect you to be content with no answer and still not question the assumptions.
Yeah, well put. Reimer's Braggery, if I've said that right, says, Aaron, I'm not sure the Bible entertains anything ever.
No, that's not true. There's some pretty entertaining parts.
I'm doing my damnedest.
Have you read Song of Songs?
Well,
seriously,
I think God, what's it fucking called?
Jonah.
Yeah, Jonah is definitely very entertaining. That's a fun read. And
I would say Esther as well.
Esther. But hey, once we get to Revelation,
like a good sex competition.
Once we get to Revelation.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, technically, it's in the Bible.
Yes, it is in the Bible.
Technically. I don't know what Bible you're talking about.
The vast majority of them.
Which are not true.
Okay. As opposed to the shorter ones, which are certainly true.
Yeah.
I mean, at least they are original. Unlike the whole thing about...
I just think you hate Christians, Tomer. I just think you don't like them.
I had a thought, actually. That one commentary where it said that Job treated his servants, or his slaves, pardon me, justly, even when their complaint was against him, or claims he would have. I don't know if this is alleged to have ever occurred. But the point is, how many times have each of you been told by a believer that when you brought up something evil God is alleged to have done, or something unjust in Christian rules, have been told, well, we belong to God. We're his property. He made us. He can do whatever he wants with us. Because I have seen, they're usually referring to God genociding people.
Yeah.
It's funny.
He wants to because he made us. And that's special pleading.
It's funny because these are the same people. These types of people tend to be the same sorts of people who will forgive slavery in the Bible on the basis of how strictly it was regulated. You can't do whatever you want to your slaves. but even though you own them, but yet somehow
You can't
God
beat
can
them
do
to
whatever he
immediate death.
wants. God
Yeah.
can do whatever he wants with you because he owns you. It's like,
Yeah, well, there's a
explain, buddy.
that provides meaning to your life, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Jojo Freelancer KUP says, a question. Do you know famous people like priests, rabbis, prophets, or other influential and or famous persons that embody Job or live according to the philosophy of the book of Job?
You mean like sad religious leaders? Like,
I
who
would
make-
I
who
would
make
argue
being
Who are
sad their
famous.
business? Or priests?
the
Well,
best
yeah.
some of the best religious leaders have suffered unjustly. Although I would
Yeah, but not the famous ones.
Monsignor Oscar Romero in El Salvador.
Hmm.
He was assassinated. He is actually famous. I believe, I don't know if he's a saint yet. I'm pretty sure John Paul II beatified him, and Mother Teresa, which was the first step to sainthood. Although he had less direct suffering, it was more that he actually used his position to stand up against injustice and to order people not to follow unjust and illegal orders from their government, even speaking directly to the soldiers who were oppressing the people violently, when he said no officer is obligated to obey an order that defies the laws of God. Meaning, you should not torture and kidnap your fellow citizens just because the government tells you to. And then he was mysteriously shot. Well, he was holding the Eucharist, actually. It was very dramatic. I've been to the chapel where he was assassinated. It was a professional shot. That's a long one.
Well, I mean, I don't know enough about. I don't know anything about that guy at all. But I think that because when they're talking about the person that like embodies Job, like the when I think about Job as a character, like if I were watching a movie or something, Job would be. I mean, yeah, Tomer was right. Mostly just a guy who's like really whiny about stuff. Some bad stuff happens, and he's just really sad about it all the time. And he, instead of questioning the deity, he's all like, whether or not it exists, he would go, "Why is all this bad stuff happening to me?" And there's the redemption arc isn't really huge for Job. I mean, he gets his family back.
Considering that Yahweh has to intervene to convince Job.
Yeah.
Like,
So you had his friends, you had Elihu. So
the guy I mentioned in the first episode when Chrissy was here, who should come back. Chrissy, come back. Who wrote the hymn about "It Is Well With My Soul." That guy lost his whole family and reached this emotional catharsis of accepting that peace in God and this sense of surrender to the divine or whatever.
Gotcha.
Then Shut Up Matt says, Aaron, while I was C of E Anglican when a child, the thought patterns and habits fell away like Forrest Gump's leg braces as I grew. There wasn't one moment of release, so to speak. Well, for me too. I'm embarrassed to say. I'm sorry that it took so long for all these things that I used to believe in one by one to fall away before I realized that there's no there there.
Bitch, it took me 30 years. What the fuck are you embarrassed about?
I think that's I think this is the case for most people, by the way. Like, I don't think you guys are like the odd ones out. I think like most people like slowly deconstruct like that.
I mean, yeah, it's a process. For me, there was a crux moment, but there was also a very long process.
I lost my faith at around age 13. I don't know about you.
No, I mean, I was around like 12 or
was
something.
Was it a single thing, Tomer?
No, it was basically like a gradual thing, but there was like a point where, maybe God doesn't exist.
Eventually just kind of come to that conclusion after you like learn enough stuff about other, about the world.
Yes.
So it is just kind of, you just kind of get there at some point. It's a slow.
Well, I have to bow to Tomer, because while I had huge questions when I was 13, I had given up belief in hell at 13 because I still believed in God and Jesus and all that. but I gave up belief in hell because it was too absurd to be real. Right? It was so obviously fake. But I have to bow to Tomer for figuring it out at 13 when I was closer to 31.
To be fair, people like me and Tomer, we also didn't believe in a hell. So that was like one less step that we had to
I
do.
mean, there is this kind of like hell thing in like, at least in religious Judaism, or at least I don't know if that's hell, but most like Kabbalic stuff, or like kefakela and shit like that. And I was like,
Yeah.
why? It's just so it felt so unnecessary for like hell and heaven for me to exist, because God is going to judge you over the stupidest shit. You ate meat after milk, or milk after meat. Who the fuck cares? Why does that have any relevance to life? Why can't we just enjoy what we do and what we have, and be good to others? Like, why do we need to be obsessed about, I don't know, eating chametz at Passover, or like shit that didn't really make sense to me? As to, like, I just want to live my life and enjoy it.
Yeah,
That's it.
So for you, did it start then as like a questioning of tradition?
Kinda. At least, I mean, my father is an atheist, but he was Haredi, and he grew out of it at his 20s. But like,
my grandfather is an atheist, but he still maintains like all the cultural Jewish stuff. So he's still like, Moses was a great man, and I'm like, this is
He's
so
not real.
I would say
you could say Hercules was the great man.
Yeah.
He's not real, but he was great.
Yeah.
I would say that my father still maintains tradition, mainly because like to preserve like Jewish identity, and I can understand that. However, I don't think that you have to insert the religious aspect of the culture into this.
I get that. I've heard that Jews are big on tradition.
Tradition.
I mean,
oh god, my dad was working. It's side story. He was working. He would help out with the local musical theater troupe and stuff, and we did plays and stuff, and he would help with the the sets and everything. They were doing pranks at the end of a run, and I don't even know if it was him. It might have been someone else, but it was at the very last night. And the guy, he drinks from a flask, and normally they just fill it with water so he can take a swig while he's out there. But instead, they switched it out with vodka on the very last night, because the very last night of show run is when you do all the pranks. And oh my God, the performance was just hilarious. He really got into it.
So I understand that Tomer figured it out at 13 because he is the mathematician, so he, better than me, knows when things don't add up.
I have to say, too, that it also, I think it's only fair to factor in the type and amount of indoctrination a person has had. I don't think that you were necessarily taught all the same self-regulating, self-indoctrinating things as some other people have, that I certainly was. I think Isaac probably was. These methods of reinforcing and feeling unable to question an idea in your mind. Like, it's very... Yeah, they literally teach you to reinforce your own chains every day, and that's hard to break out of.
I was raised in a culture of Los Angeles in the late 60s, early 70s, where it's an awful lot of hippie new age spiritualism kind of thing. So that sent me off on a different course than where my Mormon family meant for me to go.
Whoops.
Yeah.
At least you had fun. You did have fun, yes.
I identified as a hippie for a few years. Okay, so Rimmer's Braggery, or however you say that, says, Aaron, I was brought up atheist, but it still took a lot of time to get rid of the idea that faith is good. Also, the Protestant shame is difficult to shed.
Yeah, that's a cultural thing.
Okay, moving on. We're still on chapter 31.
Well, if you wouldn't quit holding us up,
Yeah, sure. Okay, on 16 through 20. Habel notes that Job rejects Eliphaz's charge that he has oppressed the poor and needy, as we see in 22:7-9. Instead, he repeats his earlier boast that he is their hero in 29:7-16, arguing that as the ideal ruler, he has protected the rights of the poor and the widow, and would expect to be richly blessed in this role, because he was generous in the distribution of his daily bread and clothed the destitute, who in turn blessed him for his kindness. Job's actions are portrayed here as life-giving, bringing justice and blessing to others. The hyperbole used in verse 18 recalls Job's earlier boastings, that his administration of justice was flawless, and his rule characterized by charity and humaneness in 29:11-17. He considered himself the father of the poor and orphans, and so any suggestion that he abused them is morally unthinkable to him. Habel also notes that a significant parallel to Job's claims is found in the Phoenician Kilamua inscription, which illustrates, quote, the widespread ideal of the ruler as one whose generosity and goodness restored the underprivileged to positions of status in the community, end quote. On 23, Hartley comments, quote, Job states the reason for his driving compassion for the unfortunate. He fears disaster from God should he abuse his wealth and power. God's majesty would overwhelm him. By this statement, Job does not mean that he acted continually out of fear and was therefore afraid to venture anything. Rather, it is to be understood in terms of the wisdom literature, which taught that the fear of God or reverence is the basis of wisdom. A profound awareness of God's majestic holiness guides a person to pursue righteousness and to shun evil. A person who believes this acts in all matters as though he is directly accountable to God. If he had denied helping the unfortunate, Job knows that he could not endure God's majesty. In God's presence, he would be condemned.
Yeah, this is a thing. It doesn't even necessarily have to do with righteousness. It's very much a meme in scripture, in Christianity, probably also in Judaism. You'll have to speak to that. That if you just see God, the glory is overwhelming. It will blind you. It might kill you, depending on whether or not you see all of it. If you see all of it, you're dead. It's like, Salome and Jove, the birth of Dionysus. It's a whole thing. But yeah, this idea that God is so overwhelming. It's just his presence comes into the room and it could burn you alive, and he has to temper it so as to not kill you because he's just so magnificent and overwhelming. And it after a while, once you start to see through a lot of the other bullshit in religion and faith, it starts to feel very pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Like, you can't even handle this. You would not be able to handle. Like, the guy who makes that threat constantly has nothing to bring to the table. He's just hoping to scare you away.
Yeah.
On 24 and 25, Clines writes that Job implicitly asserts that God is the only appropriate source of hope for humans, by denying that he has made gold, or fine gold, ketem, as his confidence, kesel. In 4:6, Eliphaz told Job, In 4:6, Eliphaz told Job that his piety should be a source of confidence, kisla, for him. So it is not entirely true that God alone is the ground of hope. He writes that confidence itself is neither good nor bad, so the question has to be, what is gold being relied on for, and is it suitable for such reliance? He writes, quote, rather than jumping to a moralistic conclusion, we may ask, is wealth really so unreliable? Job would not have had much benefit out of being a wealthy man if he has not realized that he can rely on his gold for many things. To provide him with a square meal and a roof over his head, to maintain his domestic establishment, to fund the parties of his children, to support his social esteem in the town council. A rich man's wealth is his strong city, as Proverbs 18:11 has it. And there is no point in reposting that wealth can disappear overnight. For if all one's confidence is in God, he too can turn bitter overnight, as Job has found to his cost. And even though Job has lost all his livestock and most of his servants, he has not lost his silver and gold. They have survived the tragedies of chapter 1.
All Really? Well, that's
Silver and
amazing.
gold.
So he still has money. Well, I have to say, I know that wealth is not limitless in its power, and you can absolutely lose it in very strange circumstances. But God damn it, is a hell of a lot more reliable than God.
Gamer Comrade 9012 says, I want to ask Aaron what he thinks about paganism and uncentralized religions in general. Is it more compatible with secularism and atheism than dictatorial ones like Christianity? Back in the 80s, it made sense to be a pagan, or in my case, a neo-pagan. There weren't a lot of atheists. There wasn't a lot of atheism. Satanism was, of course, totally misunderstood. So the only thing you could be, really, if you weren't Christian, if you wanted to be secular, the only way you could defend your freedom of religion was to choose a non-standard religion and practice that. And a lot of people did. But every pagan, every witch that I know or I knew in the 80s is an atheist now. It's time to walk away from all of it. It was, you couldn't identify as an atheist in the 80s because that was grotesquely misunderstood. I remember being accused of being satanic, meaning that I believe in a devil, by saying that I don't believe in a God.
Oh yeah.
Now
They still do that.
that it was in concert with still being a neo-pagan. I was atheist, but I didn't realize I wasn't being skeptical yet. So, I mean, I didn't know that an atheist was just somebody who didn't believe in a God. Honestly, if I thought that if you still believe in supernatural things, then you're not an atheist, and I still believed in supernatural things at the time. But if you said that you didn't believe in God, that means that you believe in the devil and worship him, according to like everybody. So the only way to get out of that was to be a neo-pagan. So then you can say, well, I believe in these other things. And then it's such a confusing argument that they will just walk away. That was the only defense, was that they have no understanding of what you're trying to explain. So the conversation abruptly ends. That was in the 80s. Now, totally different environment. It makes no sense to be a neo-pagan. You are more in line with the secularists for the reasons I just described. But now the impetus is just to walk away from faith altogether.
I would say that religion is complex because it has co-evolved with us over thousands of years. And while I do not approve of it, I also recognize that at some points it has filled out basic human needs. If you find ways to incorporate rituals or like myths into your life that work for you, that's your own private business. But again, it's about believing or not believing. Like, that's the part where I think we need to be clear. If you literally believe in whatever nonsense is coming out without evidence, then it's just faith, and faith is always going to lead you into disappointment. If you're trying to just find ways to connect with the greater tale of humanity with ritual or whatever, that's a journey you're going to go on personally. That's going to be your own business. And I don't think anyone should judge you for that, but just be aware of the difference, being part of a tribe, being part of rituals. I mean, even Robert Price, I think he calls himself an atheist Anglican because he goes to the church of his youth, and the songs, and they're like, there's that familiar childhood part of the tribe vibe. And he recognizes that to be an entirely distinct thing from believing in God or Jesus, literally in any sense. So I don't know. It's something a lot of people are modifying and changing with, but stay curious. Don't just accept any nonsense.
And I got to say, I went to Witch's Circle at one point with this one coven, and it's like it was a beautiful event. I mean, all the pagan ceremonies that I went to were lovely. I mean, there's a house full of people in I forget what they called the garb that they were wearing, but they're all the candles around, and all these beautiful people in beautiful outfits and everything, and they're singing and all of that. And I'm thinking, this is all really, really, really lovely and all that, but you don't really believe that these gods of the four winds and all of this shit are actually watching you, right? That was my stance. You don't really think this is true, because I didn't know that believe means make believe. I thought that they literally thought that was the case.
And as children, we make believe, and it's fun, and that's a part of our growing up, but that's, again, at some point you have to grow up. So I don't know. I've listened to a lot of Alan Watts when he's like, don't take it seriously. You can be sincere and not serious, and don't take it literally. Go have fun, do the chants, vibe with it, buy a bead, have a good time. Just don't take it seriously.
I was with a handful of witches going to this event. And I can't remember what the event was, but I mean, somebody made a cake in the shape of a chocolate cow, because the patron deity at that point, it was, I don't know, Mithras, whoever it was, but anyway, maybe it was Dionysus. No, I don't think so. But anyway, we're going up to the door of where we think that the pagan event is going to be, and everybody's in their ceremonial garb and all that shit. And I happen to notice right before they begin to knock on the door, I start noticing that all of the vehicles in the driveway have Christian bumper stickers.
Ew.
And I realize we're one door away from the house we're supposed to be at. Don't ring that doorbell.
Run away!
I was wearing a pentacle, and I had crystals hanging off of it and all that kind of shit, because I used to be all into that shit. You should have seen the adornments that I wore at that time. But and I had a Mjolnir that was made out of a double tourmaline quartz crystal, but it was wrapped in silver. I had a custom made hammer for it. Man,
that sounds so
I used to have a Mjolnir.
Yeah.
Look, I have a pretty rock. You can have a pretty rock. They're pretty. I'm allowed to like pretty things.
Yeah, but I was married to someone at the time who liked to go into the pagan the crystal shops, because she's buying for spiritual reasons.
Yeah, and if spiritual means this symbolizes this to me, and I will use it as a reminder of this, I don't know, can we assign a meaning to this?
Yeah, I just imagine it would probably have been really bad if we'd rung that wrong doorbell.
Yeah, it would have been. Unless, they might have thought that Jesus sent you to them to cure you, and possibly performed an exorcism on the stairs.
Yeah, that happened too.
People tend to do that.
That happened too. This religious nut shows up in a store I was working in. I was working in a convenience store. She comes and she's saying all this crazy crap, and I'm trying to talk her down, and she says, well, maybe God sent me to you. And I'm like, believe me, God would not send you to me.
Well, maybe he did, and he's just fucking with her. Anyway, Kip is hiding behind his hair. I think we have to get back to the topic.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Yes, we were in 26 through 28. Habel notes that the worship of sun, moon, and stars was denounced by prophets of Israel, especially after the resurgence of idolatry under the influence of foreign rulers, as we see in 2 Kings 21:3 forward, Deuteronomy 4:19, Jeremiah 8:2, and Ezekiel 8:16. He notes that it is striking that Job should be portrayed as avoiding the worship of these celestial powers, when he is located in the pro-Mosaic era, before monotheism was promoted in Israel. Habel writes that Job is an ideal monotheist, faithful to El like Abraham, as we see in Genesis 14:19, and hence, quote, a paragon of heroic piety from the pre-Israelite past, end quote.
And then we got Jojo Freelancer says, my question, did the book of Job teach heaven or hell or just Sheol? In my understanding, I mean, if God created hell for mankind, it is only a demon you need to worship.
No, there is no hell.
No. Or heaven.
No.
Christians read it in after, but it's
Can
not
I ask,
in
since I have you guys here, you say there is no heaven or hell in either Judaism or certainly in these ancient versions. Can you explain what they believed?
Well, like they believed in like when it comes to the afterlife and it comes to everyone kind of coming back, getting their own bodies and stuff like that. There would be a new the earth would be made anew,
Right.
and the kingdom of God would be on earth.
So that's yeah, so that's late. Yeah, that's the later Jewish development that gets sort of filtered into Christianity.
Yes.
Mm.
Is the new heavens and the new earth are like an actual thing
Mhm.
that God through his his human representative was going to institute a new perfect rule on earth, and everything was going to be great, and everybody would, yeah, new bodies and all that shit. Prior to that, like the older religions um held that when you died, um your person, I guess we call it a spirit.
Your breath.
They, yeah, they understood that that there was life in the breath, that when you're alive, you're breathing, and you stop breathing, and that goes somewhere. It's a place that's dark and shadowy and kind of depressing, and but you're there, um it's this shadowy place that's distant and part of this cosmic realm to
Are
which
we
you
talking
go
about
and you stay.
are we talking about Sheol being the same thing as the Greek concept of Hades, where the
It's
spirits of the dead go
very
to
s
the
it's
dead?
very similar. We don't have, I mean, based on that, and that's part of the problem here, right? We're fortunate to have a lot of I mean, just period. We're fortunate to have a lot of Greek literature. Um and in a lot of that Greek literature, we're fortunate to see a very developed idea
Hmm.
of what this looked like, right? So we tend to, what scholars tend to do is sort of look and see that in the broad strokes that seems to be reflected in these other religious ideas, these other cultural ideas. So it probably stands to reason that it looked very much like that, but we really don't know beyond that. There was this place called Sheol that all the dead go to and stay, and dark, yeah, dark shadowy existence is maybe the best
Yeah.
description we can apply to it.
I mean, there's some integrity in
It's
recognizing that you don't know, and so it's sort of, even if not literally dark, you have no idea what you're talking about, so it's beyond the veil. But also, I think it's worth
It's
pointing out that the individual idea, the individual person and soul, wasn't the same at that time. It was far more, you were your group, you were your clan, you are, the continuation of your father's line and so forth. And that was a big part of it too, living on through your children. God could do good things for your descendants, which would count as towards you in some way.
maybe maybe another way of sort of understanding this too, I think, is that within Christianity, I mean, certainly within Judaism, and this was a product of uh lots of very um hard feelings about centuries of foreign occupation and cultural oppression. Lots of Jewish people were feeling the effects of cultural displacement, venturing on a form of cultural extinction in their view, and this created a great deal of anxiety, which pushed forward this
Mhm.
idea that God, we can't do anything to repel the the Greeks and the Romans because they're too powerful, they're too strong. So God's going to come and look after this for us on our behalf. And I think at that point there starts to be an anticipation
Mm.
of this of the end. This starts to become a goal, and this is really fueled, in my opinion, within the emergence of Christianity, where the afterlife suddenly becomes the thing on which you set your focus. In
Mm.
antiquity, it wasn't. You know, your life was your life here on earth. You weren't working towards something beyond the
Mhm.
grave, where once with the onset of Christianity and through the developments of Judaism, suddenly this eventually becomes the goal, right? You do things here and now because you expect that in the afterlife this is going to be to your benefit.
That's interesting. I think that's an excellent point about, the difference between seeing the real world and yourself and maybe your children as benefiting from your choices and doing that, or seeing some future state, whether in a rebuilt earth after an apocalypse or in a heavenly paradise. Uh,
Mhm.
those are both the same thing. But this is where a longing for apocalypse begins. And we see it now. I mean, the people who are tearing down democracy and civilization, they're resentful that that their way doesn't work. And they're waiting for someone to come and just because the idea of apocalypse, God's going to come in and slaughter our enemies and we'll be proved right. You'll see when you're dead and I'm dancing on your blood and crush your enemies. And it doesn't always have to, but it very frequently and disturbingly feeds into this bloodlust and this desire for extinction. As Christopher Hitchens said, with a very real part of themselves, they want us all to die. They want the world to end because they think when this world is destroyed, then they will get to come back and be proven right and laugh at everyone who ever dismissed them, no matter how correct they demonstrably were in every way.
Yeah, what's frightening about that is that you're right. Yeah, they're absolutely wrong. They cannot accept that they're absolutely wrong on anything, but they're going to waste the world because of an alternative reality full of their own alternative facts will exist after that. And then you'll see. How many times have I heard that threat? You'll find out when you're dead. No, I already know better than you. And sadly, you won't find out anything when you're dead. You'll never learn. You'll just never get over it. Got
So
some
the
comments
the
stacking up, so
Sepher-
let me jump into those. My unfinished sock says, "Don't fear a non-existent hell. Like and share the stream instead." Thank you. Then Can You Bio offers 25 Romanian lei and says, "This is for the systematic classification of life. Best series ever made next to Star Trek: The Next Generation and The Big Bang Theory." Thank you kindly.
Very nice.
Damn. All right.
Yes, then Jojo Freelancer KUP says, "Does Judaism teach that everything will be gone? Only the face of God remains, like Islam, and after that, everything will be recreated? Do angels have godly powers in Job's theology?" There's a bunch of
God,
questions.
there's a lot going on in
So the
And then
first
he
one,
goes on, just to continue with the same person. So, did the writers of the book of Job believe that the earth
I
will
blame
stay
Peter.
forever, or did they just focus on the here and now?
well, for the first question, no. Uh,
No.
just no.
And Islam doesn't teach that either, right?
That sounds very Hindu. Very, the ages from the age of the Brahma down to the age of Shiva and the destruction of all. And then the god of destruction turns and on his back is the face of the Brahma and the cycle starts anew. That sounds very Hindu. The
Yeah.
closest thing to connecting that to Islam would be something like Sikhism, which is convergent between the two, but I'm not versed in Sikh
I wouldn't
theology.
even.
So.
Yeah, I remember there was a Sikh who reprimanded me for suggesting such a thing, because for saying that
Wait.
Guru Nanak got a revelation from God, that the true path was between Islam, the two great religions, meaning Islam and Hinduism.
Mhm.
And I said that in a video, and all I got was Sikh hate.
Yeah,
Okay,
why
well, they're
did
just
they
being-
think you were hateful? You weren't hateful. You were just
That's not
pointing
hate.
out that
That's just that's just great. It's a syncretism.
yeah,
of the two.
syncretism happens.
Yeah,
It's a thing.
like that's not like
Yeah.
a jab.
If anything, it was a jab at Christianity for thinking it was one of the great religions. No, bitch.
Mhm.
That's how I
It
meant.
didn't fucking
I
matter.
I don't remember where I saw this lesson. It was a Sikh lesson. It was promoting Sikhism, and that was whatever the source was that said that. But the reason I thought it was interesting was that the Christianity is not even. There are two great religions. Christianity isn't one of them.
Never
No.
even.
It's
Yeah.
also
Popped
the
into the
context
thought.
of it's all the context of the area in which they were in, where
Well, obviously, your God
where
depends on
Hindu-
your geographical location.
Yeah, the whole face of God being the only thing remaining doesn't sound Jewish in any way because God doesn't
If
have a
horses
face.
made gods,
in
their gods would look like
Judaism.
horses.
You know, it's a metaphor. Every time you see the hand of God or the dick of God or whatever it says in the Bible, like it's an anthropomorphism. It's not something that Jews believe that there are parts of God, like
I think Lawrence is
like everything.
frozen.
And there's so like
I think
it sounds
so.
very, very
Yeah.
foreign. The idea of like nothing remains but God's face or whatever. Like if there would be nothing besides God, then everything would be God, which is
Yeah, it's
All
it's
is a
very
dream
it's
of the Brahmin.
complex trying to understand because I think a lot of what a lot of what's happening here too is this person is conflating Judaism with earlier forms of the of Israelite religion, earlier
true.
forms of Judaism, which especially the Israelite religion look remarkably different from what we see after the destruction of the temple and into the medieval period and into the modern world.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to run because I have another
No.
appointment. But sorry guys.
Well,
But
happy
it's
to
been
have
fun.
you
It's good
on.
to see you. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll be
good to see
back.
you, Kip.
You better
Yeah.
be.
All right.
I'm
I
gonna come
promise.
down there. I'm gonna come down there and drag your ass on camera.
Wow. You promise? Okay.
Sorry, I apologize. I misspoke. It's the rod of God. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I
All right.
misspoke.
No, it's the rod of God that comforts me, huh?
Have a good show, you guys. See you later.
All right, see you, Kip.
No want.
Did we get through the questions while I was
Glitched. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, kind of, yeah.
all right? In that case, we should probably continue then.
Yes.
Yeah,
We're now on
Tom,
verse.
quit holding us
Yes.
up.
We're now on verse 30. Still in this chapter. Yeah. So 30. Clines writes that there is a difference between being glad when enemies meet with disasters and actively seeking the death of enemies by crushing them, by cursing them. Sorry. If Job has ever been glad when suffering has befallen them, why does he need to say that he has never actively wished fatal suffering upon them? He writes that it can hardly be that he was so far from gloating over his enemy that, quote, he had never permitted himself in hasty anger to throw out an imprecation against him, end quote, according to Davidson. For the offense in verse 30 is surely more serious than that in verse 29. He further writes, quote, perhaps Job means to say that he has never rejoiced over the troubles of his enemies, and on the principle of Kal Vachomer, Latin a minori, how much less will he have cursed anyone or uttered a wish for their death. Job, we recall, has been called down curses upon himself throughout this chapter, so he is no stranger to the language of cursing, but he has never allowed himself to think of doing it to the harm of anyone else. Faure compares the Egyptian saying, quote, it is better to bless another than to wrong someone who has offended you, end quote, in Papyrus in Singer 23:6. Strawn writes, quote, "If the writer of Job knew such prayers as 'In thy love kindness destroy all them that afflict my soul,' in Psalms 143:12, 'sent out thy arrows and destroy them,' in 144:6, he kept his lips closed while others sang them, but his heart would have burnt within him if he could have listened to Matthew 5:43-48.
True. Well, just to be clear, I am apparently not righteous because I have champagne chilling for the day when the obituary comes out. Please, goddess.
Yep, me too. And we all know who you're talking about.
No explanation is required.
Okay. Are there more comments? Oh.
Looks
One
like there's
more comment,
one
yes.
more.
Gordon Loves Science offers $19.99, thank you, and says, it's frustrating to me that these people will never realize that they were wrong all along after they die. Yeah, won't even have the opportunity to be disappointed.
They do live their
lot of
entire
them-
lives in misery, disappointment, and rage, though.
a lot of them already know. Now, this doesn't apply to all of them, surely, but there have been a handful of people that admitted to me in different ways that they believe what they believe because they want to believe that, even if they know that it's not really true. They're going to believe it anyway. And sometimes they admit that they know that it's not really true, and yet they believe it anyway.
What can you do?
Yeah. On 32, Hartley comments, quote, "Job extended his generous hospitality also to the sojourner or foreigner, ger, and the traveler, orach. When such transients entered the city, they often sought refuge at the plaza or the broad place of the city. There they were permitted to stay the night. The usual custom, though, was for a citizen of the village to invite the sojourner to his house, care for his donkey..." Who? Homest?
You sojourn. It is the sojourner.
It
Oh
was
my
close
god,
enough,
shut
Ari.
up.
It was
Will
close
you?
I know how to
Sojourn,
I'm
sojourn.
just
Who
helping it.
fucking cares? It's
Sojourn!
O. It's O. Too much weight to such.
English has rules.
No, it doesn't. To such wayfarers, Job's door was always open, so to speak. Nightly, he may have sent his servants out to the city's plaza in search of any travelers without lodging. Whomever they found, they graciously invited to Job's residence. Job provided a substantial meal for his guests, as the term meat indicates, for meat was usually reserved for festive occasions. Job's house guests would bear witness to his warm hospitality.
Very important culturally. We have no concept of hospitality the way they do. I think, I don't know, where does Southern hospitality, does that even come close?
Southern hospitality.
I would say it comes kind of close, yeah. Greek hospitality as well. Xenia was also very similar to that.
Strong
But-
rules.
Yeah, but it's it's like Southern hospitality on cocaine.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna put it on this.
Okay, on 35 to 37, in these verses, Job makes his final appeal to God, and then resumes his oaths of innocence. Clines writes that while we can't be certain that this was not the original sequence of the chapter, he writes that there could be a kind of force in having his very last words be yet another negative confession, as if he could go on forever certifying his innocence, and it would not be out of character for the poet to place the climax of his speech just before its end. He writes, however, that it is more likely that the original text would have concluded with verses 35 to 37. Gordis explains that verses 38 through 40b were omitted by accident, and then later restored at the end of the chapter, rather than in their proper place. This suggestion is also favored by Hartley, Forer, Pope, Dom, Driver Gray, etc. Habel, however, argues that the current structure suggests a double frame which encompasses and interprets Job's catalog of wrongs, with the outer frame, verses 1 through 3 and 38 through 40, recalling traditional covenant motifs which underscore Job's oath of purity, and the inner frame, verses 4 through 6 and 35 through 37, consisting of a double challenge with key thematic words forming an inclusio. On 38, Clines comments, quote, if the crime that Job has not committed is specifically against the land itself, it could be that of exhausting it by not allowing it its sabbatical rest, as in Exodus 23, 10 and 11, and Leviticus 25, 2 through 7. Or perhaps the violation of some taboo, like sowing the ground with 2 kinds of seed. Oh, terrible! Leviticus 19:19 and Deuteronomy 22:9. Another possible analogy is the Egyptian protestation of innocence, where the pious person avers that he has not diminished or falsified the measure of land, in Anet 34b. This is more than a hint that the ground has rights of its own, a kind of environmentalist charter. It is noticeable that in other cases of a cry for justice, za'ak or tza'ak, it is the person or thing itself that is suffering injustice that cries out, not someone else on behalf of the sufferer. On the other hand, it is a little strange to have Job defending his adherence to a specifically Israelite law, whether about Sabbath rest or about mixing seeds. Although Job does little that a pious Israelite of this type would not do, it is noticeable that the author of the book makes some attempt to sustain the portrayal of Job as a foreigner to Israel, especially by avoiding the use of the Israelite name for God, Yahweh, only in 12:9 within the dialogues. Perhaps we should think not so specifically of Israelite law about sabbatical rest for the land as of a more naive and popular concept of resting the land, which the Israelite law subsequently enshrines. So dumb. And finally, on verse 40, Hartley comments, quote, Job specifies what must befall him if he has abused his land. His land should lie fallow while briars and stinkweeds grow instead of wheat and barley. This is the typical description of land left untended. Compare Proverbs 24, 30-31. The prophet proclaimed that God executed a curse against his wayward people by causing the land to grow briars, thorns, and thistles. Compare Isaiah 5:6, 34:13, Hosea 9:6. This kind of curse wiped out a tribe's food supply, and if severe enough, it could cause them to migrate to find food for themselves and their flocks. If Job had violated his land and its workers, he asks that a curse of this kind rob his fields of their fertility. His land then would no longer support him, and he would be driven from his household to wander about in poverty. But Job affirms his innocence in regard to his management of his own land.
He's already sitting in rags in a dung heap covered in sores and bald. How much more destitute can he get?
Yes, where was he? Oh, yes, we finished with this this chapter, so we need to go with the yes.
Okay, at last, we're ready to move on to the next one.
Yes, I will attempt to read this.
No, we haven't, because we forgot about people that think that Jesus is the Messiah or something so stupid. Guess who's talking about Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Guess who's talking about Jesus? It's Lawrence. Because you do talk about Jesus all the fucking time, Lawrence.
Yes, I do.
Maybe because you cosplay him, Lawrence.
Yes, certainly. Certainly I cosplay Jesus.
Get him a sash and a loose robe.
Yep.
Okay, so Job 31 constitutes the final part of Job's soliloquy, in which he openly declares his mercifulness, devotion, and love. The fathers clearly see in Job's sincere words a figure and a foreshadowing of the Christian life and piety. Job appears as a template of all those values and virtues that will be asserted in the Gospels and the preaching of Christ.
Sure, Jan.
Yes. Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, so reading Job 32, and this would be the true reason why Kip bailed. He didn't want to read.
All right.
Yes.
I will attempt to read this one then. Let's see if I can remember how to do that. So we finally get a new character. So that's exciting.
Yay.
So these three men ceased to answer Job, because he was righteous in his own eyes. Then Elihu, son of Barachel, the Buzite of the family of Ram, became angry. Okay, sure. He was angry at Job because he justified himself rather than God. He was angry also at Job's three friends because they had found no answer, though they had declared Job to be in the wrong. Now Elihu had waited to speak to Job because they were older than he. But when Elihu saw that there was no answer in the mouths of these three men, he became angry. So this guy was just eavesdropping. Elihu, son of Barachel the Buzite, answered, I am young in years, and you are aged. Therefore, I'm going to put that on on my dating profiles. Therefore, I was timid and afraid to declare my opinion to you. I said, let days speak, and many years teach wisdom. But truly it is the spirit in a mortal, the breath of the Almighty that makes for understanding. It is not the old who are wise, nor the aged who understand what is right. Therefore I say, listen to me. Let me also declare my opinion. See, I waited for your words. I listened for your wise sayings while you searched out what to say. I gave you my attention, but there was in fact no one who confuted Job, no one among you who answered his words. Yet do not say, we have found wisdom. God may vanquish him, not a human. He has not directed his words against me, and I will not answer him with your speeches. They are dismayed. They answer no more. They have not a word to say. And am I to wait because they do not speak, because they stand there and answer no more? I will also give my answer. I also will declare my opinion. For I am full of words. The spirit within me constrains me. My belly is indeed like wine that has no vent. Like new wineskins, it is ready to burst. I must speak so that I may find relief. I must open my lips and answer. I will not show partiality to any person or use flattery toward anyone, for I do not know how to flatter, or my maker would soon put an end to me.
So 22 verses about telling us how he has words, he has the best words, but he doesn't actually say anything.
So many words.
Well-
It's kind of like the the irrefutable proof of God, where he spends the first 10 minutes talking about how irrefutable his proof was, and I listened to 5 and said, if you had anything to say, you'd have gotten to the fucking point by now.
Yeah. So yeah, new characters introduced. Guy's eavesdropping, comes in, says, listen, you guys are all a bunch of idiots. Let me tell you something. I got a lot of stuff to say about something. So we have Elihu doing that.
Get to that in the next chapter.
I think one of the interesting parts to me here is, and we can parallel this with other stuff that we've read, when it says here, even in the first verse, because he was righteous in his own eyes. And if we go back to the King's narratives, we remember that, like, usually, if someone's like real good, they're good in God's eyes, right? But him going, oh, he's righteous in his own eyes.
But then everybody who says that they're righteous in God's eyes is really
Nice, yeah.
Well, this is his way of the author's way of jabbing kind of at Job, saying like, you are not getting approval from God in any sense. Like, you are just confirming the things you already believe. You're righteous in your own eyes.
Okay.
Well, and I think we've all faced that person and realized, oh, okay, there's no getting through to this person right now, and just, walk away because you're not their parent. I don't know.
But it's a good job to jab Job, because he's a Jube.
Mission Impossible for some reason.
Yeah, I mean there is also a significance, at least I think in I don't know if in Judaism essentially, but like there is it is said that he is from the family of Ram, and the traditionals took Ram to be Abraham. Because I think Rashi says that because he was the biggest man of the giants or something like that. Or wait, the greatest man among the Anakim, which basically that's Abraham for some reason.
I didn't think Abraham was supposed to be Anakim.
Yeah, I mean that's a bit odd. I would
That sounds very like weird niche cult idea, not mainstream Judaism idea.
Well, yeah, but
I mean,
remember, when it comes to traditional commentators, they like to just kind of connect.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. There is a reference in Joshua 14:15. Wait, I think. And why won't Safari load? God damn it! Oh, wait a minute.
That's why I bring my duct tape Bible.
Oh, there we go. There is Yehoshua Yudalit. Great. Oh no, there we go. 16. Yeah, so this verse says the name of Hebron was formerly Kiryath Arba. Arba was the great man among the Anakites. Oh, I see. They take Arba to be Abraham. Okay. Yeah.
Why not? Fuck it.
Wait, is Rashi there says that Arba is Abraham? You're muted, Isaac, if you wanted to speak.
Which verse?
Joshua 14:16.
Oh.
Yeah. But yeah, there is also a conflict in Talmud Yerushalmi Sotah 5, I think, whether Elihu was Isaac and Ram was Abraham, or whether Elihu was Balaam, son of Beor, and Ram is Aramaic.
16.
Yeah.
Did you say 14:16?
14:15, sorry. 14:15.
Okay. Arba. No, according to Rashi says Arba is the name of the father of Achiman, Shishai, and Talmai. Another explanation is the father and the three sons together is.
But he says in the commentary on Job that Abraham is the one who is said to be the greatest man among the Anakim.
Which verse in Job is that? In 32?
32:2.
2. Rashi? I didn't see that.
Yes. It's Rashi.
Of Ram, Abraham, as it is stated, the greatest man among the Anakim. This is Abraham.
Yes.
Not yeah.
Yeah, Ram is Abraham.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you were saying Adam. Okay.
No, I didn't say
Yeah.
Adam. Okay. So I'll start with verse 1. Clines notes that there is something odd with the reason given for Job's friends to stop their replies. Throughout the dialogues, the friends have always known that Job has been in the right in his own eyes, and it has not stopped them before. His stubbornness could be the reason why they even engaged in conversation with him. He writes that the meaning can only rely in an unexpressed middle term, quote, that they have run out of patience for arguing with the man who continues to maintain his innocence in the face of all the evidence to the contrary.
Okay, apparently it's a midrash.
There is no evidence to the contrary except that God is fucking with him. I mean, that's ugh.
Yeah, it says Rashi does say in Joshua as another part. It says the Midrash Agada states that the greatest man among the Anakim was our father Abraham, who was instrumental for them that the land rested from war. The 40 years that they tarried in the wilderness, as a reward for that which they honored the patriarch in Kiryath Arba, for they said to him, a godly prince are you in our midst. So yeah, it's a bit of a roundabout thing, but yeah. So he's called the greatest of the Anakim because he helped them with the war or something. I can't remember exactly.
The only time Abraham went to war was that time that the 5 kings went against the 4 or 3 kings, and he rescued all of Sodom and Gomorrah from the people who'd taken them captive, and because a lot. That's the only time I know of that Abraham went to war in canon.
Oh wait, maybe not he fought a war because of our Abraham. For Father Abraham was instrumental for them that the land rested from war, the 40 years that they tarried in the wilderness.
That's not Abraham at all. I am so confused.
Yeah,
Because the thing with Abraham and the wars, that's Genesis 14.
Yeah. I got confused. It's not Abraham fighting for them. It was because of Abraham, the land rested from war. I think it's saying that when the Israelites were in the descendants of Abraham, the Israelites are in the desert for 40 years. There was no war in the land of Canaan.
Because God didn't want them to kill each other off before he could genocide them personally? What?
Yeah.
There's no logic. Oh my God. Guys, I'm getting a horrible migraine. I may have to duck out.
Oh, yeah, maybe it's...
Sorry about that.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so now verse 2, Elihu son of Barachel. Is it? Barachel. The name Elihu means my God he is. Habel notes that this name may be pointed to read Elijah, Yahweh is my God. If who is sometimes used to refer to the personal divine name Yahweh, as we see in 2 Kings 2:14 and Jeremiah 5:12, then Elihu may have the same meaning as Elijah. He writes, however, that the present point of the text is sufficiently forceful to permit a literal non-Israelite meaning, and leave the ambiguity to the audience. Clines notes that his father's name, Barachel, may God bless, may suggest, quote, an implicit denial of the cruel and unjust character of the God whom Job has been depicting, end quote. He also notes that Ram may indicate high, perhaps meaning that Elihu's high birth entitles him to speak despite his youth. According to Genesis 22, 20, and 21, Buz was the brother of Uz, who was the nephew of Abraham. Hartley writes that this might suggest that Elihu was an Aramean, but notes that in Jeremiah 25:23, Buz is mentioned along with Dedan and Tema, locals in the Edomite area. Buz may also be an allusion to disgrace or despising from the verb buz. Jason Kalman, in Encyclopedia of the Bible and its Perception Online, regarding Elihu, son of Barachel, notes that in the Testament of Job, Elihu is presented as a sinner, based on the understanding that his absence from the end was an indicator that he did not have Job pray on his behalf, and was not forgiven by God. Elihu was a sinner who, through the inspiration of Satan, spoke harshly against Job for boasting about the place reserved for him in heaven, in 41:4 and 5. He further writes, quote, in the Talmudic Midrashic corpus, Elihu is identified as a descendant of Abraham in Talmud 32:2, or of Abraham's brother Nahor in Seder Olam Rabbah 28. He was a prophet, according to Sotah 15b, and a wise man who knew to listen to Job before speaking, in Avot de Rabbi Natan A37. Elihu is described as one of 7 men who prophesied to the Gentile community, although the rabbis disputed whether he was a Gentile or an Israelite in Bava Batra 15b. He also revealed the secrets of the Behemoth and the Leviathan to Israel in Song of Songs Rabbah 128. Elihu's explanation of rainfall and perhaps the flood, for example in Job 36:27, was enough for some rabbis to justify the writing of the whole book in Genesis Rabbah 36:7. Rabbinic dispute over the nature of Elihu's prophecy and lineage, for example, Rabbi Akiva suggests that Elihu is in fact Balaam in Yerushalmi Sotah 20d, may reflect rabbinic anti-Christian polemic. His words in Job 37:23 were ambiguous, and the rabbis disputed whether he blasphemed or was worthy of praise in Exodus Rabbah 34:1.
It's a fine line, I guess. Between like praising God and being blasphemous, I guess.
On verse 3, they had found no way to refute Job. This is one of the 18 instances of the claimed tikkun soferim, correction of the scribes, in which Chazal corrected the text to preserve God's honor. The claim is that originally the text had God, Elohim, instead of Job, Iyov. Many commentators, including Habel and Hartley, favored the original reading, with the latter explaining that it is easier to account for a textual variant moving from God to Job than vice versa. Clines, however, writes that it is a little hard to see what more the friends could have done. Quote, if Job insists on maintaining his innocence, how can the friends prove his guilt other than by making allegations against him, which he will forthwith deny? Does that really put God in the wrong? End quote. He notes that Tur-Sinai preferred the Masoretic text with its alleged scribal correction, and as Delitzsch pointed out, quote, it is not principally the friends who have put God in the wrong, but Job himself much more directly. On verse 5, what?
No, it's just someone popped in and someone popped out. Okay.
Okay, on verse 5, Clines writes that nothing new is added by this verse, but as Dorm says, quote, if this preamble seems prolix, it resembles the style of Elihu in the whole chapter 32, end quote. Although some commentators excise verses 2 through 5, like Hoffman, Clines writes that the elaborate style can well be understood as an intentional introduction to the character of Elihu, as a kind of inverse, quote, represented speech, end quote. In that mode, the speech attributed to a character is contaminated by the knowledge or language of the narrative in which that speech is embedded. Here it would be the narrative that is contaminated by the language of the character. On verse 6, Habel comments, quote, Elihu's initial expression of trepidation is a forthright assertion that he is scared, quote unquote. The verb sachal has clear Ugaritic and Aramaic cognates and need not be interpreted as crawl, as we see in Deuteronomy 32:24, with Job sliding about like a snake, according to Forer, though such an overstatement may not be beyond Elihu. By confessing his insignificance and reticence, Elihu is following a known apologetic tradition in Israel. Gideon in Judges 6:15, Saul in 1 Samuel 9:21, and Jeremiah in Jeremiah 1:6, for example, assert their youthful insignificance as proof of their reluctance to assume a role to which they did not aspire. These three leaders were divinely chosen. Elihu, however, is a self-designated champion of truth to the aged. Compare 33:33. He is young, uninitiated, and passionate. He has the makings of a fool. Compares Proverbs 12:15 and 14:17. On verse 8, Clines writes that Elihu is apparently arguing that what gives intelligence to humans is the life spirit, ruach, that is in humans, namely the breath of Shaddai, Nishmat Shaddai, breathed into humanity at its creation. Thus, all humans have their portion of God's breath, which is their own vitality, and so all have the necessary precondition for wisdom. Elihu cannot mean that because all humans are equally dependent on the divine breath for their life, then all humans are equally wise. His interest is solely in denying that length of life must imply wise judgment. Clines further writes, quote, some think it better to regard the divine wisdom bestowing spirit as a special gift that Elihu lays claim to. Other references to such a spirit are Genesis 41:38, Exodus 28:3, 31:3, Numbers 27:18, etc. Elihu himself speaks of a revelation by dreams in 33:15-18, but he does not claim dreams as the source of his own inspiration. Piquet thought that Elihu means that he is speaking by a divine inspiration, not vouchsafed to the other friends. Others, such as Driver Gray, think that even the distinction between the common human endowment of life breath and the special inspiration of the wise and the prophets is unreal. It is, quote, the same spirit in less or greater measure, working for and achieving different ends, end quote. And here too it seems preferable to see Elihu referring to the life spirit common to all humans.
Wait, what verse did it cite as him getting Was it Revelation from a Dream?
In 33, 15 through 18.
Okay, gotcha.
On 11 and 12, Habel writes that Elihu claims to have studied the pre-trial case presented by the friends, reflecting in their words, dvarim, and their insights, tvunot. He writes that dvarim seems to carry a forensic connotation and imply the charges or claims brought against Job. The tevunot are presumably the insights which the friends have discerned from their traditional understanding of suffering, in Proverbs 5:1. It seems that Elihu has treated the preceding dispute as a pre-trial investigation which culminates in Job's demand for public litigation. He has considered these proceedings closely and come to the conclusion that no one is present who can handle Job's case. Habel further writes, quote, Elihu contends that there is no mochiach, arbiter, or oneh, respondent, or one who answers, to process Job's suit with Shaddai. The legal connotations of the verb yachach and ani in similar contexts suggest that Elihu is referring to the need for an arbiter to process Job's case and a legal expert to answer Job's charges. Job had himself sought someone to arbitrate the case openly and fairly in 933 and 1621. Finally, he called for a public court case with a judge or arbiter, in Hebrew shomea, but no one was forthcoming. Job's friends on earth and his witnesses in heaven, 1619, were now silent. In that void, Elihu sees his opportunity to shine. He steps forward as arbiter and attorney for the defense. On verse 15, Clines comments, quote, Elihu is of course offering his own reading of the friends' feelings. They would hardly agree that they have become dismayed or terrified by their lack of success with Job. The word Elihu uses is a strong one, chatat. Job has used it of the frightening dreams God has sent him in 7:14, of the fear he might have felt but did not, of the social pressure of his kinfolk, of the fear of contagion he imputes to the friends in 6:21, while in 39:22 it is used of the fear the wild horse knows nothing of. It is in raillery. It is in raillery that Elihu alleges that they are afraid to continue the debate. Quote, the once redoubtable three, who as exhausted combatants have retired from the fray, end quote, according to Strachan. And by implications, he casts himself as the brave hero who is willing to take Job on when the others have lost their nerve. Piling on the irony, he says that words have deserted them, a newly minted phrase, though a cliche to us, as though speech itself of its own accord has abandoned them as men beyond help. In 9:5, atak was used of God removing mountains. If words have shown a clean pair of heels to the friends, it is all too easy to see where they have been headed. It is to Elihu, who now finds himself with almost a surfeit of the most excellent arguments. On 19 through 20, Habel comments, quote, the wine motif, as adapted by the poet, suggests a further element of satire. Wisdom invites the simple fool to hear feast of mixed wine and bread, to her feast of mixed wine and bread, in Proverbs 9:2 and 5. Yet the person sated with wine is in a drunken stupor. Jeremiah experienced a similar sensation because of his messages against the false prophets, in Jeremiah 23:9. The cry of the populace that every jar would be filled with wine is interpreted by Jeremiah as a sign that the inhabitants will be filled with drunkenness, in Jeremiah 13:12-13. Quote, wine is a scorner, strong drink a mocker, and those who are led astray by it are not wise, end quote, runs the proverb in Proverbs 21. For Elihu to describe himself as filled with wine is to employ an ambiguous metaphor and may suggest that his prolixity and bold speech are the marks of a drunken fool. The wind and the wine...
I'm drinking blackberry mead, so shut up.
Sure. The wind and the wine appear to be related images. Elihu is bloated by both and about to explode with extended discourses. This interpretation is supported by the use of the verb ruach, relief, which is apparently a play on the word ruach, wind. When Elihu speaks, there will be an explosion of wind and word. Like the brash fool, he will expose his true nature by opening his mouth, in Proverbs 17:27 and 28. Note that the apostles who claim to be filled with the Spirit are said to be filled with new wine in Acts 2, 4, and 13. And finally, 21 and 22, Hartley comments, quote, Elihu affirms emphatically that he will speak the truth without being partial or showing favoritism to anyone. On the one hand, in his apology, Elihu argues that in wisdom he is on a par with his elders. On the other hand, he is saying that he will not cloud the issue with the use of titles or with flattery. Kina. The use of titles is proper unless intended to influence a person to a favorable bearing. Then their use is a kind of bribery. Elihu, though, will speak his convictions plainly and boldly regardless of how his words might offend either Job or the comforters. In fact, he declares, I do not know how to flatter. He believes that accommodating himself to others would prompt God, his maker, to carry him away, possibly by a storm, compare 27:21. He thus claims unwavering allegiance to God, an allegiance that will not be altered by the prestige or persuasion of anybody.
And when you say finally, does that mean you're done?
Yes, just need to check something real quick because, yeah, and there are no ancient Christians.
Okay.
No.
All right, then we will be moving to 33. Okay, and I'll go ahead. If we good with that?
Yeah.
Okay. But now, hear my speech, O Job, and listen to all my words. See, I open my mouth. The tongue in my mouth speaks. God, this kid is an ass. My words declare the uprightness of my heart, and what my lips know they speak sincerely. The Spirit of God has made me, and the breath of the Almighty gives me life. Answer me if you can. Set your words in order before me. Take your stand. See, before God, I am as you are. I too was formed from a piece of clay. No fear of me need terrify you. My pressure will not be heavy on you. Surely you have spoken in my hearing, and I have heard the sound of your words. You say, I am clean without transgression. I am pure, and there is no iniquity in me. Look, he finds occasions against me. He counts me as his enemy. He puts my feet in the stocks and watches all my paths. But in this you are not right. I will answer you. God is greater than any mortal. Why do you contend against him, saying, he will answer none of my words? For God speaks in one way and in two, though people do not perceive it. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falls on mortals while they slumber in their beds, then he opens their ears and terrifies them with warnings, that he may turn them aside on their deeds and keep them from pride, to spare their souls from the pit, their lives from transversing the river. They are also chastened with pain upon their beds and with continual strife in their bones, so that their lives loathe bread and their appetites dainty food. Their flesh is so wasted away that it cannot be seen, and their bones, once invisible, now stick out. Their souls draw near the pit, and their lives to those who bring death. Then, if there should be one of them, an angel, a mediator, one of 1,000, one who declares a person upright, and he is gracious to that person and says, deliver him from going down into the pit, I have found a ransom. Let his flesh become flesh with youth. Let him return to the days of youthful vigor. Then he prays to God and is accepted by him. He comes to his presence with joy, and God repays him for his righteousness. That person sings to others and says, I sinned and perverted what was right, and I was not paid back to me. He has redeemed my soul from going down into the pit, and my life shall see the light. God indeed does all these things, twice, 3 times, with mortals, to bring back their souls from the pit so that they may see the light of life. Pay heed, Job. Listen to me. Be silent, and I will speak. If you have anything to say, answer me. Speak, for I desire to justify you. If not, listen to me. Be silent, and I will teach you wisdom. What an arrogant fucking prick.
Yeah, that's the point of Elihu.
Yeah.
He's the arrogant one.
Yeah, indeed. And I noticed that he's talking about going down into the pit. So we had a reference to Sheol before, and that Sheol here is referred to as the pit. But then they're also crossing the river. Are they talking about the Styx or a parallel with the Styx?
Which
Which
verse was that?
Oh, 18.
18. Okay,
He
so
spares him from the pit, his person from perishing by the sword. You say it's stick?
oh, okay, yeah. To verse 18, yeah. To spare their souls from the pit, their lives from traversing the river.
Yeah. So the word here is shalach, which is sometimes like older translations have it as sword or weapon, but commentators now call it the river, taking that as a reference to the subterranean canal, like the
We are
Styx,
talking about the Styx?
I mean,
or
it would be
the
similar.
or the river Hubal in Mesopotamian mythology.
Yeah, yeah.
So
In fact, there was a river that was identified as like what the Mesopotamians were talking about. Hold up, let me pull it up. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Yeah, so I noted this in my commentary, that there is also a play on the titles Shachat and Shelach, pit and channel, which may be a reminiscent of the names of the Canaanite deities Shachar and Shalim, dusk and dawn.
What I'm saying is that we have in the Levant, we have a medium point between like the Hindu civilization and Europeans, and so we have this formation of religion that has so much in common, where you have references in Hinduism that sound an awful lot like things that were said in Judaism, and then likewise belief in Judaism that also it seems to be the same initial belief that they have in Greek Hellenism. So there seems to be like evolving faiths is what I'm seeing here.
Yeah, this. I mean, I think I mean, like Canaanite the Israelite religion would have been initially more close to Mesopotamia, which would have been slightly more different, and Hinduism and Greek would have been closer to each other because of their like shared origins, like Indo-Aryan, whatever it's called. And but the Greeks would have gotten a lot of influence from Mesopotamia, Phoenicia, Canaanite stuff as well. So it feels to us like it's possibly a Greek influence, but I don't know if it's which way it is necessarily at this point when this was written.
Yeah, it would be the Huber River. Yeah, this is in reference to the Gilgamesh epic here, but it says that the lethal waters or the waters of death. The phrase has been connected with the classical view that the underworld was encircled by a river, which is also found in some Akkadian texts.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, go back to that evolution thing. So the Akkadians also had that same belief.
Well, yeah, because the thing is this is far closer to like Akkadian stuff, because we've seen a bunch of references to a lot of mythological characters from the ancient Near East, and from Canaan and Assyria included. We've already had references to Lotan, right? To Rahab, or Rahab's later, right? Did we go over Rahab? No, we went over Rahab. Yeah. So yeah, there are a lot of connections, not just here, but also once we get to like Ezekiel, for example, we're gonna see that his vision it contains, let's call them creatures that are very similar to ones that we find in Assyrian reliefs. So you have these beings that have multiple wings, and I think multiple legs too. So they're kind of describing the same mythological creature. And but again, that's found in Assyrian reliefs. So there was certainly a lot of influence there, because like when you're exiled off in Babylon, you're gonna include a lot of this stuff that you just kind of pick up along the way.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to try and figure out, like, you know, where are we seeing, like, say, Greek influence in a later, which could be possibly a later text, or is it an earlier text before the Greek, you know, winning the war with the Persians and kind of taking over the area, you know, and it could be the other way. So, is it possible that, I think the river Styx, an idea of like someone taking you over the river, like, is it possible the Greeks got that from the Assyrians, the Akkadians, the Persians? Not Akkadians.
It's hard to tell exactly
Yeah.
where they would have gotten it from, because for them, I think our sources are pretty late for that one.
Right.
For like, you know, the whole like story of like the river Styx and crossing it. Those are some late sources, compared to this at least. So it's hard to tell where they got it from, right? But like you have like an attendant there, right, to have them cross over, and yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to look back into it. But yeah, for on the Huber River thing, Sumerian Ilurugu, river of the underworld, and the river ordeal used to settle disputes. Same word means it's a tributary of the Euphrates in Syria. So possibly like an origin for it. But yeah, that's from Myths of Mesopotamia, Creation, the Flood, Gilgamesh, and Others. Translation from Stephanie Daly. So it's like, I remember seeing some stuff about this, and for some reason I remembered like the exact page it was on too, so I just flipped to it, which is kind of crazy that I remember that.
Okay, I'll start with verse 1. Clines notes that only Elihu uses Job's name, in contrast to his friends. Fogel thought that it signifies some closer or familiar relation in which Elihu stands to Job, and Pope thought that it is in Elihu's temperament that he expresses greater familiarity with Job in his use of his name. Gordis wrote that Elihu was feeling insecure and called by Job's name to get his attention. Clines notes that others think that the use of the simple name, without, for example, mentioning the father's name, is impolite or else the sign of a lower status of the one addressed, as we see in 1 Samuel 1:8, 17:55, 22:16, etc., but writes that the evidence is very complicated. Hartley writes that in calling Job by his name, Elihu is being as good as his word in the previous two verses, in 32, 21, and 22, where he has promised not to use any flattering titles. On verse 4, Hartley writes that Elihu adds authority to his speaking by affirming his own origin in terms that allude to the account of the creation of the first man, in Genesis 2:7. He writes that just like Adam, Elihu was made by the Spirit of God when, quote, the breath of Shaddai gave him, a lump of clay, life, end quote. He writes that in referring to his origin in this way, Elihu claims that he is equal to both Job and the friends, and that his words are worthy of careful attention, for they are inspired. Clines notes that it is commonly said that Elihu, in referring to the Spirit of God and the breath of the Almighty, is casting himself as one of the wise, but writes that this does not seem to be correct. He writes that Elihu's words refer to the moment of creation, when the divine life force was imparted to all humans without differentiation. On verses 6 and 7, Habel comments, quote, the patronizing tone of the previous verse is intensified here in Elihu's protestation of commonality with Job. Their oneness, contends Elihu, is based on a common earthly origin at the hands of the Creator. Like all humans, they possess a common spirit from Shaddai in 32:8, and bear the same mortal frame. Thus, while Elihu may summon Job to appear before Elihu as the authority figure in the case, In verse 5, Job need not defer to Elihu as though he were divine. They can debate the case man to man. Nor should Job be intimidated by Elihu's ema, terror or dread, as though the anger of God was emanating from Elihu's presence, as we see in Exodus 15:16, Psalms 88:16, which is 15 in the Old Testament. Elihu is alluding to Job's earlier complaint that God's terror could so incapacitate Job that a fair trial was impossible in God's presence, as we see in 9:34 and 13:21. Elihu, it seems, deigns to put Job at ease and promises not to overwhelm him with an awesome personality and presentations. Wait, need to check something. Dane, okay. Never heard of this word.
Dane, D-E-I-G-N?
Yes, D-E-I-G-N. Apparently,
Yeah,
it's to
like...
condescend reluctantly and with a strong sense of the affront to one's superiority that is involved.
Yeah.
Synonyms of Dane include stoop and condescend, whatever. Okay. On verse 9, Clines notes that several commentators like Driver Gray, Rowley, Gordis, Pope, and Anderson claim that Elihu misrepresented Job. Hartley writes that Elihu has chosen words that have Job claimed moral perfection, whereas Job has asserted that he is innocent or blameless. Clines adds that though Job has never protested his innocence in exactly the words Elihu is using, there is no difference between his own claims and Elihu's account of them, and he would not dissent from this statement of his attitude. He writes, quote, "Throughout his speeches, he has always claimed to be without fault, which is no more than the narrator of the prologue has assured us in the case in 1:1. So it is not true that, quote, Job has made frequent references to his errors and transgressions, end quote, according to Gordis. For all the passages that are thought to show this are to be explained differently. In 7:21, my sin means my sin as you reckon it. In 10:6, my sin means some supposed sin in me. In 19:4, in referring to my error, Job is arguing that his punishment is out of all proportion to, quote, any error I can possibly have committed, end quote. In 13:26, he does indeed refer to the sins of my youth. But he means by that sins or faults for which he is not morally responsible, since he does not think he should be punished for them.
Which reminds me, I just noticed that the Department of Justice told the courts that they can't be forced to release the Epstein files. You can't make me.
Ugh, I hate this country, man. What hellscape are we fucking living in?
Yeah. Trump is blocking the law he signed a month after they failed to meet the deadline. Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Anyway, tell me more, Tomer, about how we will not be punished.
Yes, of course. On verse 11, Habel comments, quote, "The closing accusations of Job reported by Elihu reflect the related roles of God as oppressor and spy. Job had asserted that he, like other humans, is forced to live as a slave." On 7:1-3. Existence is considered tantamount to oppression on 3:10 and 3 verses 10, 20-23. One image of Job's oppressed condition is a portrait of himself in stocks, sad, and subject to public ridicule in 1327. The motif of God the spy who watches, Shamar, Job as a dangerous foe, is reflected in Job's ironic titles for Shaddai. He is the watcher of humans and the seeing eye who invades human lives in search of ways to harass them in 7, 8, and 20. The verb watch, Shamar, therefore, which normally refers to God's providential care, in 10:12, here becomes a euphemism for God's satanic surveillance operations, as we see in 10, 13, and 14, compare 14, 16. Yes, he uses God's satanic surveillance operations.
Would a Jewish person at that time ever make reference to such a thing?
What, to his satanic surveillance operations?
In that context, it makes sense, right?
Yes.
Like, God's satanic messenger or
Ha-Satan, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, on 14, Hartley comments, quote, one of Elihu's main postulates is that God goes to great efforts to communicate with a person, above all to prevent that person from going astray. Elihu believes that God speaks to a person in many different ways and on many occasions. The sequence of the numbers 1, 2 draws attention not to the small number of occasions on which God speaks, but to God's repetitive efforts to speak to that person. This interpretation is confirmed by the sequencing of the numbers 1, 2 with twice, thrice at the end of the major section in verse 29. Even when a person fails to recognize the manner of God speaking, God keeps seeking to communicate with that person. The two most prominent ways God employs to warn an individual are visions during the night in verses 15 through 18 and disciplines of pain in verses 19 through 22. On verse 15, Habel notes that dreams and vision were recognized as vehicles of divine communication in the ancient Near East. In the Babylonian Ludlul Bel Nemeki, the Job-like sufferer, through a series of dreams, discerns a message of restoration to health. Here, a specific divine being appears in the dream to impart the message. Similar examples of direct communication through dreams can be found in the Old Testament, such as Genesis 15:12 through 16, 23, 31, 24. Though in many instances the message remains symbolic and demands special interpretation, as we see in Genesis 41:11 and 12, Judges 7:13 through 15, and Daniel 2:31 through 45. He writes, quote, Elihu implies that ordinary dreams may also be a way to hear God speaking if the dreamer has the insight to interpret the dream. Dreams were recognized as but one of the available means of soliciting an answer from Yahweh, as we see in 1 Samuel 28:6. Elihu, however, is not discussing incubation dreams, where the individual takes the initiative to obtain an oracle from a deity. Here, God provides the clues through a dream, and the individual must interpret the meaning from its effect. 4 modes of nocturnal experience are cited as acceptable to God as vehicle of divine testimony. Dreams, Chalom, Genesis 23, night visions, Chazon Laila in 4:13 and Daniel 7:2, deep sleep, Tardema in 4:13 and Genesis 15:12, and slumbers, Tenumot. On 17, Hartley comments, quote, God's purpose is to turn a man from committing a deed that is harmful or that may lead him into sin. The use of ma'aseh, a non-pejorative Hebrew word for deed, indicates that the deed in itself is not a sin. The second line suggests that the potential sin for the doer resides in his becoming proud of his accomplishments. When someone, because of his success, starts to think of himself as better or more deserving than another, he looks for ways to exalt himself and to promote his own welfare at the expense of others. Pride prods even a spiritual or disciplined person to commit deeds of selfishness in his continual striving to improve his own standing. As one proverb teaches, quote, pride goes before destruction and a haughty attitude before a fall, end quote, in Proverbs 16:18. So God seeks to stifle an improper attitude from leading to wrongful acts by warning the person in a dream. On verse 18, their lives from perishing by the sword. Hebrew for sword is shalach. Early translations render shalach as sword or weapon, such as Septuagint, and from his falling in battle, and Targum, by the lance, by the arms of war. A meaning favored by traditionals, with Rashi and Kara specify that this is the sword of the angel of death, an interpretation favored by Tur-Sinai. Modern commentators, however, take the shalach to be the subterranean canal, like the Greek river Styx and the Mesopotamian river Hubal. This meaning is found in NEB, the river of death, and NRSV, the river. Hartley notes that Pope relates the word to the Akkadian shalchu or shilichtu, referring to a water conduit or channel. Clines notes that Dorm thought of it as a vertical canal down which the dead pass on their way to the netherworld, but takes it as improbable. Habel adds that Shalach is also a northwest Semitic deity, whose name survives in the title Metushelach, man of Selach, or Shelach. He suggests that the titles Shachat and Shelach, pit and channel, may be reminiscent of the names of the Canaanite deities Shachar and Shalim, dusk and dawn. On 19 and 21, Habel comments, quote, Elihu presents his second example of evidence that El leaves a testimony to his involvement by describing the hypothetical case of an individual suffering extreme agony and debilitation. Serious illness has destroyed the appetite of the person and reduced the body to skin and bone. The pivotal terms in this portrait are indicated, hukach, and trial or lawsuit, riv. Both terms belong to the forensic language of Elihu and Job, as we see in 9:3, 13:6, 16:21, etc. Elihu has just rebuked Job for attempting to bring his lawsuit, rib, before God in verse 13. In the court trial of Micah in 6:2, Yahweh has a suit, rib, he brings against his people, and in which he indicts or arraigns, yachach, them. According to Elihu, sickness may be evidence of a lawsuit in the bones and suffering an indictment in the body designed to provoke repentance. The human frame, not the city gate, may be the locus of El's lawsuits. On 23, the identity of the angel, malach, described in this verse, has been debated since antiquity. Hartley notes some of the suggested identities. 1. Another human being, for example, a covenant friend, a prophet, or a teacher. 2. The sufferer's own conscience. 3. One of the angelic hosts, like Ibn Ezra, quote, from this verse you learn that there are many angels who kill and seek the soul of a person, and one angel is appointed to guard it, end quote, and Nachmanides. 4. The heavenly witness mentioned in 1619. 5. The special angel or messenger of Yahweh, Malach Yehovah. And 6. The concealed Christ, according to Gregory. Habel writes that the Malitz is an advocate or mediator, chosen for a specific office, the prototype of which may be the Mesopotamian personal deities who interceded on behalf of humans before the divine council. Clines writes that this clause should be understood as describing the usual function of the mediating angels, representing them as essentially conveying God's will to humans, like prophets. The angel would then be described as one whose function is to inform humans of their duty. Like prophets, they may sometimes represent humans before God, as we see in Tobit 12:12 and 15, Targum Daniel 6, and Jubilees 30:20. On 26, Hartley comments, quote, the renewed person enthusiastically prays to God, and God accepteth. Specifically, he takes the first opportunity to offer a praise offering and possibly a vow offering at the local shrine. In this way, he expresses his heartfelt gratitude to God for his deliverance. When he makes his offering at the high moment, he beholds God's presence, as the phrase he sees his face indicates. Filled with fear and wonder at beholding God's glory, he utters a joyful shout, teruah. He has the inner assurance that God accepts him. In this way, God may restore to him his righteousness, tzedakah. Here, righteousness means that God accepts him as an upright and blameless person. All suspicion of wrongdoing that he has been raised against him during his affliction fades into the dusk. Once again, he has full standing before God and the community. On 29 and 30, Habel comments, quote, Elihu's summation of this case connects the opening topic statement in verse 14 with the recurring theme of God's ultimate purpose in verses 18, 24, and 28. Thus, concludes Elihu, El does testify publicly to human beings in a variety of ways designed to redeem them from disaster in the pit. These things, ele, refer back to the modes of testimony and the concomitant processes of redemption articulated in the previous verses. The closing idiom, bask in the light of life, brings to a climax the sequence of images relating seeing and light, as we see in verses 14, 15, 26, and 28. The pit represents the realm of total darkness, death, and rejection. Light is the symbol of life, illumination, and acceptance by God, as we see in Psalms 4:7, which is 6, 27:1, Proverbs 6:23, and Isaiah 49:6. And finally, 31 through 33, Hartley comments, quote, Elihu concludes his first speech with an exhortation that Job attend to his words. He requests that Job be silent so that he may proceed to develop his ideas. Apparently, Elihu wishes to proceed without a reply from Job, but remembering his own pent-up feelings, He offers Job an opportunity to speak should he feel so compelled. If not, then he enjoins Job to listen in silence as he teaches his wisdom. He desires to help Job be acquitted and procure the restoration of his status and estate. Perhaps he wishes to prevent Job from responding in a manner that might silence him as it did the three friends. The silence of the loquacious Job may seem improbable, but it is part of the plot of the entire work. Since Job has offered his final appeal to God, he will wait for God's reply, not man's. Therefore, it must not then be thought that Elihu has reduced Job to silence. Nevertheless, since Job does not answer, Elihu takes up his second discourse after a brief pause. Just a second. Okay. Christians. 33, 14. Yes. So this section of Elihu's speech, i.e. 33, 14 through 33, which concerns repentance, enables the fathers to develop different arguments, all pointing to Christian doctrine and life. Elihu's words become a clear figure of Christian faith, which has two of its main fundamentals in repentance and conversion. According to Julian, Ishodad, Ephraim, Gregory, and Philip, through dreams and visions, God guards people from shameless actions. According to Ishodad and Julian, God comes to us as a physician from above, and finding us oppressed with such great disease, applies to our case something of a like and something of contrary nature, coming to our humanity as a man, and to our sin as the incomparability just one, according to Gregory. It is an admirable thing, and very pleasing to God, that humans do not feel ashamed to confess their sins, according to Philip. Though the mind of the elect suffers in each of three stages, the pain of conversion, the trial of probation, and the dread of dissolution, they are purified and set free from this very suffering, according to Gregory. That's it. You're muted, Isaac.
Yeah, I didn't really understand what the Christians were trying to claim there, but
Yeah, who
I
cares?
don't really care either.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to guess then that we are not going to run over to 34.
No.
Let's not do
No.
that.
No.
Are we getting closer to the more interesting stuff?
I mean, kinda. I mean, 38, we have God coming up and saying, "Hey, Job, I exist, and what the fuck can you do now?"
Yeah, that's where it gets fun. Where
Yeah.
God says incredibly stupid shit. Yeah, I am God, and I keep lightning bolts in the storehouse. Yeah. And who did you create the constellations, as if those constellations are really real things and not just configurations of stars that you arbitrarily imagine make these patterns?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about, I can't remember which part it is about, because I'm watching Gutsy Gibbons' series where she is teaching evolution to the guy who did the final experiment. What's his name? Will Duffy. Who is like he did this whole thing about proving that the Earth is round to a couple of flat earthers and took them to the South Pole to prove it, and
Okay.
and then people found out like, wait, you're a creationist? How's that possible? Like you're being all rational. You understand that people are like flat earthers are wrong and all that stuff, but you can't use the same tactics on yourself. And so he agreed that he will do this series with Gutsy Gibbon, and it's really interesting. Everything he says is stupid, but but her teaching is actually really good.
Yeah. So the thing
so
that
he
amazes me
mentioned-
about that is that, I've been doing this challenge for a
Yeah.
quarter of a century, that I would prove evolution even to your satisfaction. And the issue has been that we never get past the definition of what evolution is. If it's not the straw man, if it's not one thing giving birth to another fundamentally different thing that is so completely different that is not even related to its parents, then that's not evolution. No, you're talking about microevolution. Yeah, microevolution and macro, they're the same thing. No, they're not. One has to have change in kinds. There's no such thing as a kind. I'm trying to teach you what it really is, not the stupid bullshit Kent Hovind told you it is.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the benefits of Will Duffy is that he's not an apologist. He is just someone who's like been told all of this stuff, and he admits it. Like, I didn't even know this about evolution at all. I didn't know this. But when
he's the pastor of a church, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, and he's also been on Dan Stern Cardinal's channel to learn about ERVs. And junk DNA.
See, ERVs should really be like the thing that really fucking proves it.
A nail in the coffin, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they don't believe in the idea of junk DNA or anything like that. So it's like everything is there for a reason, even though we can just knock it all out. Whatever. No, but he brought up Job, as it wasn't part of the evolution stuff. He brought it up as like, why does he actually still believe, or something? And he said, oh, the Bible has like these knowledge that no one else knows. And he brought up like the gravitational pull of Pleiades versus Orion's belt, or something like that. And it was annoying because like no one in the comments were like understood like the reference, like the context, and they were like, well, it's Greek mythology or something, like. But yeah.
Yeah,
it'd be interesting when we get to that
video
part
on
and
this.
talk about it.
I made a video on exactly this reference. Well, I've done 2 of them, but yeah, it's frustrating how desperate they are to ignore every stupid thing the Bible says, to imagine, well, that when it, like the spreading the skies, this is common with the Bible and the Quran, that God stretches out the heavens, and so they take that to mean cosmic inflation. Who the fuck would have understood that? If you go back 100 years, who in the world would have understood this as cosmic inflation?
Nobody.
Now go back 1,000 years. Nobody.
Which is why I was
claim that
I was arguing with some Muslims, and they were like, "Oh, here's like this scientific fact in the Quran that they only found out later," and then I was like, "But nobody thought it was anything in reference to that. Like they reinterpreted it to get to the conclusion. Nobody thought that it was talking about the universe in any way."
It was literally what the Bible says. Stretches out the heavens like a tent.
Yeah,
it's going over the firmament.
Yes,
I've been going camping all my life, Arn. You know what never happened? That the next year when we put up the tent, that it was bigger than the year before. Never happened.
I have kind of similar but a reverse thing with the roof on my Jeep, because somebody had to explain to me why is it that when it gets cold I go to put the roof on and the roof doesn't fit anymore. Did it get smaller? I realize that most of us get a little bit heavier when we get older, but did my Jeep get bigger too? The type of canvas that the roof is made of actually shrinks in cold weather. Yeah,
that's very handy.
I do remember you telling it when you actually needed the roof, it wouldn't fit anymore.
Yeah.
What I would say is that they should give an example of like religious scholars from the Middle Ages or whatever reading something in the scripture and postulating like a scientific law or thing that comes from that. No one is saying like, oh, because the Quran said this, it must be that the universe works in this way, and we didn't, and then we actually discover that to be true later on. Like that would be interesting, but they never do that. It's always once we've discovered it, then they go back and they say, actually, this is what the Quran meant, or this is what the Bible and Job
everything
meant.
the Bible explicitly says, or the Quran explicitly says, contradicts that. So they have a geocentric concept where the Earth is not only the center of the universe, it's also the biggest thing in the universe, and it's the first thing in the universe. The sun was created after the Earth. And the Earth is this vast plane, and the sun and the moon are both the same size as each other, both smaller than the Earth and orbit around. Why are you biting me?
Yeah, find me a medieval Talmudic scholar who claims that the first verse of Genesis means that God created mass and energy. You know, like you're not going to find that. You're only going to find that people claiming stuff like that afterwards. Yeah. All right. We'll definitely get to that.
All right. So chapter 34, 1 week from today. We're not doing a midweek thing this week. Right?
Actually, I have a thing on Saturday to go to because
we were
next week is
you have
my
a
birthday.
thing on Saturday?
Yeah, I do have a thing on Saturday. It is my birthday. Not this next Saturday. This Tuesday is going to be my birthday. It's going to be
what Tom is trying to say is that he can't do this Tuesday and this Saturday, so he's making it even more difficult than usual.
Okay.
Sorry, Tomer, I had to do
Lawrence, I did want to ask Lawrence and Aaron, like, are Sundays a bad day to do shows on? Like, because whenever we don't do a Saturday, it's always like, okay. So Sundays aren't good either.
I work on Sundays, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, don't you have a show on Sunday, Lawrence?
I used to.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you used to.
We used to have multiple shows.
Yeah.
All right, then.
Yeah. That sucks.
All right, so
Yeah,
I guess we don't have anything else to say then?
Yeah,
No,
nothing.
we'll figure out the next day that we're doing this.
Really?
Yeah.
We're just not even going to talk about a Discord?
Nothing
Yeah, we
nothing
can
further to
talk about
say,
Discord.
Lawrence.
Yes, you should join my Discord. I don't know. I've been hearing rumors about this Tomer guy having a Discord.
Lawrence put a lot of effort into making
It's an alternative Discord
recently, so come and join us. There is no Discord in our
also,
Discord.
Lawrence, I don't know what happened, but I mean, may I just extend an invitation to Chrissy?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll let her know.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be fun if she can join us for that chapter as well.
Before we're done with Job?
Right.
Yes. What is it? 38? Is that the chapter?
Oh, I know. Yeah, we're gonna do 34, 35, 36, and 37. Maybe. I would like to crank those out because at 38 on, I would love to see as its own damn thing.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
So there's so much there.
We'll go for it.
Okay, but we can't do it this Saturday because Tomer has one of those eyes wide shut kind of mask parties to go to.
You know me. You know me.
That just reminded me of the picture I saw of like Mar-a-Lago's ferry ball or whatever they had. Did you see that?
Put on a dog mask, and the only other thing you're wearing is a cape. Okay, so when then will we meet up? Not this Saturday. So
can we do Thursday?
I can make Thursday.
I think
Lawrence?
Thursday will also be fine for me. Let me just check my.
I think Lawrence is checking.
Thursday will be fine.
Yeah, Thursday's fine for me.
Okay.
Oh, perfect.
Regular time.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. I will just because I fear that I may not remember. I'll go ahead and set up the link today, and everybody can complain that I put up a link days beforehand. But yeah, because they do. because people just they
can
bitch
imagine.
about everything.
I
You go
know
on the
I know at
you go
least
on the
one
line
person,
and
Arn.
videos that aren't available.
Arn, I know at least one person who won't be complaining, and that's someone that you think they have a good name. My unfinished sock will love it when you post early, so they can post early.
Okay. All right then. All right. If there's nothing else, hasta la bye bye. Y bias nachos.